It is 3 in the morning, and the world is asleep, but you are not. There is a profound silence in the room, broken only by the gentle hum of some unseen appliance. Yet a storm rages within your mind. It is not a physical fatigue that keeps you awake, not the kind that comes from a long day of labor, but a weariness of the soul, a deep and unsettling exhaustion. A parade of past regrets and future anxieties marches relentlessly through your awareness. Conversations from yesterday are replayed, decisions are second-guessed, and the endless list of tomorrow's obligations looms like a mountain in the dark. You are tired, more tired than you have ever been, yet sleep remains a distant shore you cannot reach. This experience, this quiet suffering in the lonely hours of the night, is not merely a problem of insomnia. It is a symptom of a deeper spiritual ailment, a disconnection that plagues our modern world. We have been taught to worship at the altar of productivity, to see busyness as a badge of honor, and to view rest as a form of failure or a luxury we cannot afford. We have become experts at filling every waking moment with distraction, with information, with noise. We are sleepwalking through our days, our attention fractured, our spirits depleted, only to find that when we finally lay our heads down, true, restorative rest eludes us. This feeling of being stuck, of being overwhelmed and unable to quiet the inner chaos, is not a personal failing. It is the natural consequence of a life lived out of harmony with our own inner nature. But what if this very restlessness, this dark night of the soul, was not an end point, but a starting point? What if the path to peace was not found in forcing the mind to be quiet, but in understanding, with great compassion, why it is so loud? An ancient wisdom, born from the deep introspection of the Buddha, looks upon this state not with judgment, but with profound understanding. It offers not a simple technique for sleep, but a pathway to a state of rest so deep, it heals the very roots of our anxiety. It speaks of an inner peace that can coexist with the storms of life. This is a journey to find that peace, a journey through what we will call the 3 hours of truth. These are not hours on a clock, but 3 great transformative stages of awareness that guide us from the darkness of our suffering into the gentle light of understanding and release. We begin the first hour of our journey, an hour dedicated not to finding answers, but to understanding the question. For true healing cannot commence until we have the courage to make an honest diagnosis. The problem, the root of our profound and restless exhaustion, is the ceaseless hum. It is a noise that has become so constant, so pervasive, that we have forgotten it is even there. It is the background radiation of our lives, the soundtrack to our modern existence. It follows us into our cars, our offices, and even into the supposed sanctuary of our homes. And when all the external sounds of the day finally fade, this hum reveals its true nature, for it was never outside of us to begin with. It is the noise of the mind itself, a machine that has forgotten how to switch off. To find peace, we must first learn to listen, truly listen, to the quality and character of this noise. The most obvious layer of this hum is external, a relentless barrage of stimulation deliberately engineered to capture our most precious resource, our attention. Our phones vibrate in our pockets, not with messages from loved ones, but with notifications about sales, breaking news of distant tragedies, and reminders that someone, somewhere, has posted a fleeting image of their life. We walk through the world with earbuds in place, filling every potential moment of silence with podcasts, audiobooks, and music, terrified of what we might hear if we were left alone with our own thoughts. The screen has become our primary window to reality, a portal to an endless, shimmering digital ocean. We scroll and scroll and scroll, not in search of anything specific, but in a state of hypnotized servitude. Each new image, each shocking headline, each heart-shaped icon of validation delivers a tiny chemical reward to our brain. This is the dopamine economy. We are not the customers, we are the product. Our attention is the currency, and we are spending it into bankruptcy every single day. The architects of this world understand human psychology better than we understand it ourselves. They know that the brain craves novelty, and so they provide an infinite feed. They know that uncertainty is addictive, so they create the pull-to-refresh mechanism, a digital slot machine that might pay out with a new message, or it might not. We are like rats in a maze, pressing a lever for a pellet of stimulation, again and again, until we are too exhausted to do anything else. In this state, we are told that the key to success is to do more, to be more efficient, to multitask. This is perhaps one of the most damaging myths of our time. The human mind cannot truly multitask. What it does instead is switch tasking, a frantic and inefficient toggling between different objectives. Imagine trying to have a deep conversation with someone you love, while also juggling, reading a book, and cooking a meal. You would do all of these things poorly, and you would end the experience feeling scattered, frustrated, and deeply unsatisfied. Yet, this is precisely what we demand of our minds every single day. We answer an email while on a conference call. We scroll through social media while watching a movie. We think about work while playing with our children. Each switch is a small tear in the fabric of our awareness, a tiny expenditure of mental energy that, over time, accumulates into a profound deficit. This constant switching prevents us from ever dropping into a state of deep focus, the very state where genuine creativity, problem-solving, and peace are found. We live in a perpetual state of mental shallowness, skimming the surface of our own lives, and we wonder why we feel so empty. The deeper, more insidious layer of the hum is the one we have internalized. The values of the loud, demanding, external world have become the voice of our own inner critic, our own relentless project manager. We have come to believe that busyness is a virtue and stillness is a sin. Our self-worth has become entangled with our to-do lists. If we are not producing, achieving, or improving, we feel a gnawing sense of guilt and anxiety. And so, we generate our own internal noise. Even when the phone is off and the house is quiet, the mind continues to produce its own endless stream of content. It plans, it rehearses, it remembers, it judges. It constructs elaborate narratives of past failures and fantasizes about future triumphs. It worries about money, about health, about what others think of us. This inner narrator never ever stops talking. It is the voice that is loudest at 3 in the morning, the one that insists on solving the world's problems and our own in the dead of night when we are at our most vulnerable. There is an old Zen story that perfectly illustrates this condition. A highly educated scholar, renowned for his knowledge, traveled to visit a wise old master to inquire about the nature of Zen. As the master welcomed him, the scholar immediately began to speak, showcasing his vast learning, explaining all his own theories and ideas about enlightenment. After a time, the master offered him tea. He began to pour the hot tea into the scholar's cup. He poured until the cup was full, and then he kept pouring. The tea overflowed, spilling onto the saucer, then onto the table, and finally onto the floor. The scholar, in alarm, shouted, "Stop, it is overflowing. No more will go in." The master stopped pouring, looked at the scholar, and said calmly, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" We are that scholar. We come seeking peace, tranquility, a way to heal. But our minds are already overflowing. They are filled to the brim with the noise of the world, with the demands of our egos, with the incessant chatter of our own thoughts. We are so full of content that there is no room for context. We are so full of doing that there is no space for being. We want to pour the clear water of peace into a cup already filled with muddy water. The first step, the work of this first hour of truth, is not to add anything new. It is simply to acknowledge, without judgment, the state of our own overflowing cup. It is to recognize the ceaseless hum, both outside and inside, and to see how it has fragmented our attention, disconnected us from the present moment, and left us in this state of weary, restless vigilance. Once we can see the cup for what it is, once we can truly hear the noise, a new question arises. Our immediate instinct, our deeply conditioned reflex, will be to try and force the cup empty, to fight the noise and wrestle the mind into submission. But this impulse, this grasping for control, is itself a part of the storm. It is a path that only leads to a deeper, more exhausting struggle, a struggle with the very illusion of control itself, which we will now explore. Having witnessed the overflowing cup of the mind and heard the ceaseless hum of its activity, the most natural human response is to declare war. An inner commander rises from the ranks of our consciousness, determined to impose order on the chaos. This is the part of us that grits its teeth in the darkness and commands, "Think about nothing." This is the voice that, feeling the first stirrings of anxiety, says, "Just calm down." It is the drill sergeant of the soul, believing that with enough willpower, enough force, it can beat the mind into silent submission. We treat our own consciousness as an unruly subordinate, an untamed animal that must be broken. This declaration of war is a valiant, well-intentioned effort, born from a desperate desire for peace. But it is a war that can never be won. In fact, the very act of fighting is what perpetuates the conflict, digging us deeper into the trenches of our own suffering. This is the great illusion of control. Imagine your mind as a large glass jar filled with clear water. At the bottom of the jar rests a thick layer of fine, brown mud. This mud represents all the latent anxieties, the unresolved sorrows, the fears, and the restlessness that lie within you. As long as the jar is still, the water remains clear. But the events of life and the relentless hum of our thinking inevitably shake the jar. The mud is stirred up, and the water becomes cloudy, murky, and opaque. Our immediate instinct, when faced with this murky water, is to try and fix it. We think, I must get this mud out. We plunge our hands into the jar, trying to grab the swirling particles of silt, trying to force them back to the bottom. But what is the result of this frantic action? The water only becomes more agitated, more impenetrably cloudy. Our very effort to control the situation, to force clarity, is the very thing that makes clarity impossible. The wisdom of the contemplative path offers a radically different approach. It suggests we do nothing at all. Simply place the jar on a steady surface, leave it alone, and watch. Without any effort on your part, through the simple, inexorable law of gravity, the particles of mud will slowly, gently begin to settle. In time, the water will return to its natural state of perfect clarity. The mud will still be there, but it will be at rest. Your mind is this jar of water. Your attempt to fight your thoughts, to suppress your feelings, is the hand plunging into the water, ensuring it remains forever turbulent. There is a story of a man who was deeply troubled by the restless nature of his own heart. Seeking peace, he went to sit by the shore of a vast, calm mountain lake. In the early morning, its surface was like a flawless mirror, reflecting the sky and the surrounding peaks in perfect detail. But soon, a light breeze passed over the water, creating 1,000 tiny ripples that shattered the perfect reflection. The man, a perfectionist by nature, found this deeply disturbing. He wanted the lake to be perfectly still again. He waded into the cool water and tried to smooth the ripples with his hands. He cupped the water, he slapped at the surface, he waved his arms frantically. To his immense frustration, he found that for every ripple he managed to flatten, his own movements created a dozen more. The more he struggled, the more chaotic the surface of the lake became. Exhausted and defeated, he finally gave up. He retreated to the shore, slumped onto a rock, and simply watched his own failure. He watched the chaos he had created, and as he sat there, in a state of complete surrender, he noticed something miraculous. The breeze died down, and the waves caused by his own struggle began to subside. Little by little, the lake's surface grew calmer, until, once again, it was a perfect, silent mirror. The peace he had been fighting so desperately to create was the lake's natural state. It was his own struggle, his own illusion of control, that had been the sole obstacle to that peace. This struggle is the source of so much of our self-inflicted suffering. We experience a primary discomfort, a first arrow. Perhaps it is a pang of loneliness, a flicker of fear, or the physical discomfort of being unable to sleep. This first arrow is an unavoidable part of life. But then, we fire a second arrow into ourselves. This second arrow is our resistance to the first. We feel the loneliness, and then we think, I shouldn't be lonely. There is something wrong with me. We feel the fear, and then we command, I must not be afraid. We feel the wakefulness, and we become frustrated. This is terrible. I'm going to be useless tomorrow. This resistance, this internal argument with reality, is the second arrow. It is the hand in the muddy water. It is the man fighting the ripples. The initial discomfort might be a 5 on a scale of 10, but our frantic resistance, our anger and frustration at the discomfort, can amplify the suffering to a 9 or a 10. We become exhausted not from the initial problem, but from the war we wage against it. So what is the alternative? If forceful effort is counterproductive, does that mean we must simply give up in passive resignation? Not at all. The alternative is a different kind of effort, a kind of paradoxical, intelligent surrender. It is the skill of learning how to float. If you are thrown into water and you do not know how to swim, your instinct is to thrash and struggle. You fight the water, trying to climb on top of it. This very struggle is what makes you sink. A swimming instructor will tell you to do the opposite. Relax, lie back, trust the water, allow it to support you. It takes immense courage to stop thrashing and to trust the water. But the moment you do, you discover that the water was capable of holding you all along. You float. This is the nature of working with the mind. The effort is in the relaxing, in the trusting, in the letting go of the struggle. It is the conscious and courageous choice to let the mud settle, to let the ripples subside on their own. This deep, instinctual need to control, to manage, and to fix our inner world does not come from nowhere. We fight so hard against the murky water because we are terrified of the mud. We believe that if we could just get rid of the anxiety, the sadness, the imperfection, we could finally be at peace. We are driven by a fundamental, often unspoken, sense of discomfort with life as it is. There is a low-grade hum of dissatisfaction, a feeling that things are not quite right, a subtle but pervasive friction that underlies all our experiences. This feeling is the true engine of our need for control. We believe that if we can just arrange the world, both inner and outer, in the correct way, this feeling will finally vanish. This universal condition, this fundamental unsatisfactoriness of a life lived in ignorance of our true nature, is so central to the human experience that the Buddhist tradition gives it a special name. It is called dukkha, and understanding its nature is the next step on our journey. We have seen how our struggle for control, our frantic attempt to calm the stormy waters of the mind, only creates more turmoil. We fight because we are deeply uncomfortable with the murkiness, with the feeling that things are not right. This struggle points to a deeper truth, a fundamental condition of existence that we often feel but rarely name. It is the subtle friction of life, the low-grade hum of dissatisfaction that persists even when things are going well. It is the reason why a perfect summer day is tinged with the sadness of its own ending, why the thrill of success quickly gives way to the fear of failure, why even in moments of peace, there can be a quiet, underlying anxiety. The Buddhist tradition has a word for this universal human experience. The word is dukkha, and here we must pause, for this word, dukkha, is perhaps one of the most profoundly misunderstood concepts in all of Eastern philosophy. It is often translated into English simply as suffering. This translation is not wrong, but it is tragically incomplete. For the Western ear, suffering conjures images of immense tragedy, of famine, war, and devastating loss. It sounds heavy, pessimistic, and bleak. If Buddhism's first truth is that life is suffering, it can seem like a philosophy of despair. But this is a distortion. The true meaning of dukkha is far more subtle, far more intimate, and ultimately, far more empowering. Imagine a magnificent horse-drawn carriage, built by a master craftsman. It is strong, beautiful, and designed for a smooth journey. But imagine that one of its wheels was made just slightly, almost imperceptibly, off-center. On a perfectly paved road, the ride would still have a constant, nagging vibration, a subtle, irritating bumpiness. It's not a catastrophic failure. The wheel doesn't break, the carriage doesn't crash, but the journey is never truly comfortable. There is always a baseline of friction, of being ill at ease. That is dukkha. It is the pebble in your shoe. It is the quiet static on a radio station that prevents you from ever hearing the music with perfect clarity. It is the fundamental unsatisfactoriness of a life lived without clear seeing. To understand it fully, the Buddha described it in 3 distinct flavors. The first, and most obvious, is the dukkha of painful experiences. This is dukkha as we typically think of suffering. It is the pain of a migraine headache, the sting of a harsh criticism, the grief of losing someone we love. It is the anxiety that tightens your chest before a difficult conversation, the despair of seeing your life's plans fall apart, the sharp, undeniable pain of a broken heart. This is the first arrow we spoke of. It is an unavoidable reality of human existence, woven into the very fabric of having a body that can get sick and a heart that can be wounded. The Buddha did not deny this reality. He acknowledged it fully and without flinching. This is the part of life that is overtly painful. The second flavor is more subtle, and it speaks directly to our modern condition. It is the dukkha of change. This is the stress and unsatisfactoriness that arises from the fact that pleasant experiences do not last. Think of the most perfect moment you can remember. Perhaps it was watching a glorious sunset, the sky painted in impossible colors. There is a profound joy in that moment, but there is also a quiet, unspoken tension, because you know, with absolute certainty, that it is fleeting. The colors will fade, darkness will fall, and the moment will become a memory. This is the suffering of impermanence. It is the bittersweet feeling at the end of a wonderful vacation. It is the peak of a career achievement, which almost immediately gives way to the question, what's next? It is the joy of holding your newborn child, knowing that this tiny, dependent being will one day grow up and leave. We grasp and cling to happy moments, trying to freeze them in time, but reality is a flowing river, not a frozen pond. Our resistance to this flow, our desire for permanence in a world where nothing is permanent, is a constant source of underlying stress. We are trying to build a solid fortress on the shifting sands of time, and the effort itself is exhausting. The third flavor of dukkha is the deepest, the most pervasive, and the most difficult to see. It is the dukkha of conditioned states, This is the wobbly wheel itself. It is the background radiation of dissatisfaction that comes simply from being a conditioned, constructed self. It's the baseline anxiety of being a vulnerable human being in a complex world. It's the feeling that even when there is no overt pain, and even when you're not clinging to a pleasant experience that is fading, there is still something not quite right. It is the inherent friction of an existence that we do not fully understand. We are conditioned by our genetics, our upbringing, our culture, our thoughts, our biases. We walk through the world identifying with this bundle of changing conditions, this entity we call me, and we spend our entire lives trying to protect it, promote it, and defend it. This constant, low-grade effort to maintain a fragile sense of self in a world that constantly challenges it is the very essence of Sankara dukkha. It is the wearying burden of being somebody all the time. To speak of dukkha is not to be morbid or negative. It is the opposite. It is an act of supreme compassion and radical honesty. Imagine going to a doctor after feeling unwell for years. The doctor runs some tests and finally sits you down and says, "I have a diagnosis. What you have is this specific condition. Is this bad news? No, it is the best possible news. For the first time, your vague, unnamed suffering has a name. It has a shape. It can be understood. The diagnosis is not the illness. It is the first step toward the cure." The Buddha is often called the great physician. In laying out the truth of dukkha, he is not condemning us to a life of suffering. He is offering us a clear, precise diagnosis for the human condition. He is saying, the feeling of being ill at ease that you have felt your entire life is real. You are not imagining it. It is not your fault. It is a fundamental characteristic of an unenlightened life. And now that we have named it, now that we can see it clearly, we can begin to investigate its cause. This is an act of profound validation and immense hope. It frees us from the burden of thinking we are uniquely flawed and places us firmly in the shared boat of the human experience. We have looked at the symptom. The next question, the question that opens the door to healing, is what causes it? What are the sources of energy that feed this fire of unsatisfactoriness? The Buddha identified three, which he called the three poisons of the mind. If the truth of dukkha is the diagnosis of our dis-ease, then we must now, with the same unflinching honesty, examine its cause. The great physician, the Buddha, did not point to the stars, to fate, or to the actions of others as the primary source of our suffering. He pointed inward. He taught that the fire of dissatisfaction is fed by three primary fuels, three toxic energies within the mind itself. These are known as the three poisons, or sometimes the three fires, because their nature is to burn, to consume our peace, and to perpetuate the cycle of restlessness. They are greed, hatred, and delusion, and to understand them is to hold the key to our own liberation. The first poison is greed, known in the Pali language as lobha. This is not simply the desire for a new car or a bigger house, though it certainly includes that. At its core, greed is the deep, insatiable hunger of the ego. It is the constant, gnawing feeling of not enough. It is the lean of the mind towards anything it perceives as pleasant. When we taste a delicious meal, greed whispers, "I need more of this." When we receive a compliment, greed says, "Tell me again." When we experience a moment of joy, greed frantically schemes, "How can I hold on to this forever?" It is the voice of craving, of clinging, of attachment. It is the desperate attempt to fossilize pleasure, to turn a flowing river into a block of ice. There is an old, stark parable that perfectly captures the nature of this poison. Imagine a man, lost in a vast desert, dying of thirst. His throat is cracked, his vision is blurry. Stumbling over a dune, he discovers a well. But the water in the well is salt water. In his desperation, he cups his hands, brings the water to his lips, and drinks deeply. For a single, fleeting moment, there is the sensation of relief, the feeling of moisture on his parched tongue. But this relief is a cruel illusion. Almost immediately, the salt begins to ravage his body, drawing out what little moisture remains. He becomes more dehydrated, more desperately thirsty than he was before. Trapped in a cycle of delusion, he believes the only solution is to drink more. He drinks again and again, the momentary relief followed by an ever-intensifying, burning thirst, until it consumes him completely. We are all this man, drinking salt water. The endless scroll through our social media feed is a sip of salt water. Each like offers a momentary relief from the fear of being unseen, but it only deepens the underlying thirst for validation. The compulsive purchase of a new gadget is a sip of salt water. The thrill of the new object fades within days, leaving behind the same emptiness and the thirst for the next acquisition. The desperate clinging to a relationship not out of love, but out of a fear of being alone, is a long, slow drink of salt water. We seek permanent satisfaction in things that are, by their very nature, impermanent and unable to quench the deep spiritual thirst of the heart. Greed promises happiness, but delivers only an escalation of desire. It is a fire that feeds on the very things we throw into it, and it is a primary source of the agitated, restless energy that keeps us awake at night. The second poison is its polar opposite, the force that pushes away. This is hatred, or aversion, known as dosa. Like greed, this is not just about its most extreme form, like violent rage. Aversion is any movement of the mind that rejects reality. It is the subtle irritation you feel when caught in a traffic jam. It is the sharp judgment that arises when someone expresses a political opinion you disagree with. It is the resentment you hold onto from a past hurt. It is the harsh voice of self-criticism that attacks you for your perceived flaws. It is any thought or feeling that declares, "I don't like this. This should not be happening." While greed is the desperate pull towards, aversion is the violent push away. If the mind poisoned by greed is like a desperate thirst, the mind poisoned by aversion is like a fortress under perpetual siege. The ego stands on the ramparts, scanning the horizon for any incoming threat, any unpleasant experience. When a criticism is launched, the fortress raises its shields of defensiveness. When a feeling of sadness approaches, the guards pour boiling oil of distraction over the walls. When the reality of our own imperfection tries to enter the gates, we meet it with the sharp spears of self-loathing. This fortress is never at peace. It is in a constant state of war with the world and with itself. The energy required to maintain this siege is immense. It is the energy of complaint, of blame, of indignation, of holding grudges. It is the exhausting effort of resisting life as it unfolds. It is the second arrow, fired with deadly precision at our own hearts, over and over again. These two poisons, greed and aversion, are the two great forces that tear our peace apart. We spend our lives oscillating between them, chasing what we want and running from what we don't. But they do not arise from a vacuum. They grow from a deeper, more fundamental poison. They take root in the fertile soil of the third poison, delusion. The third poison is delusion, or moha. This is the taproot of all our suffering. Delusion does not mean stupidity or a lack of intelligence. A Nobel Prize-winning scientist can be deeply deluded. At its core, delusion is a fundamental misperception of reality. It is a fog of ignorance that prevents us from seeing things as they truly are. What are they, truly? They are impermanent, they are interconnected, and they are empty of any solid, separate, enduring self. Delusion is the condition of forgetting these truths. It is the deeply ingrained belief that we are a separate, solid me, a protagonist in a story, living in a world of other, separate, solid things and people. Delusion is the master poison because it makes the other two possible. It is only because we are deluded into thinking that a new promotion will bring us lasting happiness, ignoring impermanence, that the poison of greed can arise. It is only because we are deluded into seeing another person as a solid, separate, inherently bad entity, ignoring interconnectedness, that the poison of hatred can take root. Delusion is the darkness in the room that allows us to mistake a rope on the floor for a snake. Greed is wanting to possess the beautiful but non-existent snake. Hatred is the terror and revulsion we feel towards it. The entire drama is based on a simple failure to see what is actually there. These three poisons are not abstract philosophical concepts. They are the operating system of the restless mind. They are the engines of the inner noise. Greed generates the endless planning and fantasizing. Hatred generates the endless rehearsing of arguments and the nursing of grievances. And delusion provides the unquestioned assumption that all of this mental activity is real, important, and about a solid me. Together, they form a toxic, self-sustaining loop, the very spinning wheel of dukkha. They are the reason our cup is always overflowing. They are the source of the mud and the water. But these poisons have no power in a vacuum. They wield their influence through a specific mechanism. They hijack our sense of time, pulling our awareness away from the only place where peace can actually be found, and imprisoning it in the phantom realms of the past and the future. We have identified the three poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion as the toxic fuel that feeds the fires of our inner turmoil. But this fuel needs an engine to do its work, a mechanism through which it can exert its power. That engine is the human mind's peculiar and dysfunctional relationship with time. Our consciousness, in its unenlightened state, is a broken time machine, perpetually stuck shuttling between two destinations where life does not exist. A past that is forever gone, and a future that is yet to be born. In this frantic, restless movement, the one place where life actually happens, the vibrant, ever-present now, is left abandoned, a ghost town of missed experiences. This enslavement to what was and what might be is the tyranny of the past and the future, a core pillar of our deep-seated restlessness. Let us first explore the haunted house of the past. For many of us, the mind is not a peaceful home, but a sprawling, dusty mansion filled with ghosts. We spend countless hours wandering its corridors, compulsively reopening doors to rooms we should have long since sealed. Behind one door is the ghost of regret. Here, we endlessly replay our mistakes. We see the foolish words we said, the opportunities we missed, the wrong turns we took. We torture ourselves with endless loops of what if and if only. Each time we replay the scene, the old feelings of shame, embarrassment, and failure feel as fresh and sharp as the day they were born. We believe we are learning from our mistakes, but more often, we are simply re-inflicting the punishment, keeping the wounds open and infected, preventing any real healing from taking place. Behind another door is the ghost of resentment. In this room, we replay the hurts inflicted upon us by others. We rehear the cutting remarks. We re-feel the sting of betrayal. We nurse the grievances that we believe justify our anger. To hold on to resentment is one of the most draining activities of the human mind. It is, as the saying goes, like drinking poison yourself and waiting for the other person to die. It does not harm them. It corrodes us from the inside out. It chains us not to justice, but to the very people who have caused us pain, giving them free rent in the precious real estate of our minds. And even what seems pleasant can be a ghost. Behind a gilded door is the ghost of nostalgia, the sweet, aching memory of a golden age. It might be the memory of our youth, a past relationship, or a time when life felt simpler. We cling to these shimmering memories, polishing them until they glow, and we use their light to cast the present moment in a dull, disappointing shadow. This form of attachment to the past, a subtle manifestation of greed, prevents us from appreciating the gifts of the life we are actually living now. Whether we are haunted by regret, resentment, or nostalgia, the result is the same. The past is nothing more than a collection of thoughts and memory traces arising in the present. It has no power on its own. We give it power. We give it life. Every time we choose to abandon the now and wander back into its spectral halls. If the past is a haunted house, the future is an endless, shifting labyrinth. This is the realm of anxiety. The mind, fleeing the ghosts of the past, projects itself forward into a maze of its own creation. It tries to map out every possible corridor, to anticipate every dead end, to solve every potential problem that might lie around the next corner. The vast majority of this mental activity is not skillful planning. It is compulsive worrying. Skillful planning is done in the present moment. You realize you need food for the week, so you sit down and write a grocery list. It is calm, focused, and effective. Worrying is something else entirely. It is being at your desk on a Tuesday, while your mind is completely absorbed in rehearsing a difficult conversation you anticipate having on Friday. It runs through dozens of permutations, imagining what you will say, what they will say, and how it could all go terribly wrong. This is a dress rehearsal for a disaster that will likely never happen, and the cost is the loss of your Tuesday. This obsessive future thinking is rooted in the delusion that if we worry enough, we can control the outcome. It's a kind of superstitious ritual. We believe that by mentally pre-suffering, we can somehow ward off actual suffering later. But the future, by its very nature, is uncertain and uncontrollable. Our anxious labyrinth building does not protect us. It simply exhausts us. We suffer 1,000 imaginary catastrophes, draining the energy we need to deal with the real, tangible challenges that actually arise in the present moment. We live in a state of anticipatory dread, a low-grade fear that is fueled by the endless what-ifs that our minds produce. We become so lost in the twisting corridors of this imaginary maze that we forget that we can simply stop, stand still, and find ourselves on solid ground, right here. A wise teacher once told the story of a man he saw walking down a road, bent over in pain, groaning under the weight of 2 enormous sacks slung over his shoulders. His face was etched with exhaustion and misery. The teacher approached him and asked, "Friend, why do you burden yourself so?" The man grimaced and shifted the weight. He pointed to the sack on his back. "This sack," he said, "is filled with all my past mistakes, my regrets, my grievances. They are heavy, but I must carry them to learn from them." Then he pointed to the sack he clutched to his chest. "And this sack," he continued, "is filled with all my future worries, my fears, my anxieties. I must carry them to be prepared for what is to come." The wise teacher looked at the man with compassion, then pointed to the ground beneath his feet. The path was smooth and clear. The sun was warm on his skin. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves in the trees. "Is it not strange?" the teacher said softly. that you spend all your strength carrying burdens that are not on the path, and in doing so, you fail to notice the journey itself? The path you walk upon right now is clear. You can put the sacks down. We are that traveler. The past and the future are the two sacks we carry. We believe we must bear their weight, but they are filled with phantoms. The only reality is the path under our feet. This is the abandoned kingdom of the present moment. It is the only place life ever happens. It is here, now, that we feel the sensation of the breath entering and leaving our body. It is here, now, that we can truly see the face of a loved one. It is here, now, that we taste our food, feel the warmth of a fire, or hear the sound of rain. The present is the point of power. It is the only place from which we can make a new choice, think a new thought, or take a skillful action. By living in mental time travel, we voluntarily abdicate our throne, choosing to be absent from our own lives. We become ghosts, haunting the past and the future, while the rich, vibrant, and very real kingdom of the present lies empty and waiting. This constant state of absence is itself a deep form of suffering, but our reaction to it, our frustration with our own inability to be present, creates yet another layer of pain. It is the pain of the second arrow. We have journeyed through the disquieting landscapes of the inner world. We have seen how the mind, clouded by the ceaseless hum of modern life, struggles for a control it can never possess. We have named the fundamental dis-ease of dukkha, and we have identified the three poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion that fuel it. We have witnessed how this entire toxic system operates by hijacking time, imprisoning our awareness in the phantom realms of past and future. It would be easy, at this point, to feel a sense of despair, to see ourselves as helpless victims of these powerful inner forces. But now, we arrive at a pivotal turning point in our understanding, a teaching so profound and practical that it can radically reframe our entire relationship with pain. This is the parable of the second arrow. It is a teaching that reveals that our greatest suffering comes not from the challenges of life, but from the wounds we inflict upon ourselves in response to them. The Buddha, in his role as the great physician, explained it with beautiful simplicity. Imagine, he said, a person is struck by an arrow. There is a sharp, immediate, and undeniable pain. The flesh is torn, the body is wounded. This is the first arrow. This arrow represents the unavoidable pains of human existence. It is the headache that arrives without warning. It is the car that breaks down on the way to an important meeting. It is the sting of an unkind word from a stranger. It is the grief that comes with loss, the fear that arises from uncertainty, the physical pain that comes with illness and aging. The Buddha was a supreme realist. He never taught that a spiritual life would grant us immunity from these first arrows. To be alive, to have a body, to have a heart, is to be vulnerable. These first arrows are part of the contract of being human. They are, in many ways, outside of our control. But, the Buddha continued, if that same person, after being struck by the first arrow, then begins to brood and obsess over what has happened, they are effectively picking up another arrow and shooting it into themselves, in the very same spot. This is the second arrow. It is the arrow of our reaction. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. The first arrow was the headache. The second arrow is the thought. This is a catastrophe. My whole day is ruined. I can't get anything done. Why does this always happen to me? The first arrow was the unkind word. The second arrow is the days of replaying that comment, the seething resentment, the shame, the internal narrative that begins. They must think I'm an idiot. Maybe I am. The first arrow is the physical pain. The second arrow is the fear and terror that the pain will never end. This second arrow is not fired by life. It is fired by our own untrained mind. And it is this arrow, not the first, that is the source of the vast majority of our suffering. The pain of the first arrow might be a 5 out of 10, and it might last for 10 minutes. But the suffering generated by the second, third, fourth, and fifth arrows of our own mental proliferation, the worry, the blame, the catastrophizing, the self-pity can be a 9 out of 10, and it can torment us for hours, days, or even years. The second arrow is a direct manifestation of the three poisons in action. When we are hit by the first arrow of an unpleasant experience, the poison of aversion immediately arises, declaring, I don't want this. This shouldn't be happening. The poison of greed arises as the clinging to a reality without this pain, a desire for a different present moment. And the poison of delusion provides the underlying belief that this momentary pain is a permanent and personal indictment of our entire lives. The Buddha described the difference between an ordinary, unenlightened person and a wise, well-instructed person. When the ordinary person is struck by the first arrow of a painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves, and laments, beats his breast, becomes distraught. He, the Buddha says, feels two pains, the physical one and the mental one. He is struck by two arrows. The wise person, however, when struck by the very same first arrow, does not react in this way. They feel the unpleasantness of the painful feeling, certainly. They do not deny it, but they do not add the second layer of mental resistance, commentary, and narrative. They do not fire the second arrow. Therefore, they feel only one pain, not two. Imagine two people walking outdoors when it begins to rain. Both of them get wet. This is the first arrow, the unavoidable reality of the situation. The first person, representing the untrained mind, immediately begins to suffer. Oh, this is terrible. I'm getting soaked. My clothes will be ruined. I'm going to catch a cold. Why does it have to rain today of all days? This is so unfair. They are miserable, angry, and at war with reality. They are not just getting wet. They are suffering from the story about getting wet. The second person, representing the trained mind, also gets wet. But their inner response is simply, it is raining. They feel the coolness of the water on their skin. They notice the sensation of wet clothes. They observe the reality of the situation without adding a layer of resistance or complaint. Both are wet, but only one is suffering. The second person has learned not to fire the second arrow. So how do we cultivate this profound skill? How do we learn to feel pain without creating suffering? The answer is not to become numb, cold, or unfeeling. It is not about building thicker armor. In fact, it is the opposite. It is about becoming more sensitive, more intimate with the raw, unfiltered experience of the first arrow. The practice is to intercept the process, to create a sacred pause between the first arrow striking and our habitual tendency to fire the second. This practice is mindfulness. When a painful sensation or emotion arises, instead of immediately launching into the familiar narrative, we can learn to bring our awareness directly to the physical experience in the body. If you feel a surge of anxiety, the first arrow, the second arrow is the thought, "Oh no, here we go again. I hate this feeling. What's wrong with me?" The mindful alternative is to gently shift your attention. Where is the anxiety, physically? Is it a tightness in your chest, a fluttering in your stomach, a tension in your shoulders? Is it hot or cold? Does it vibrate, or is it a solid, heavy lump? We don't need to analyze it, fix it, or even name it. We simply observe it with a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity. We feel it fully, without adding the story. In doing this, we create a space, and in that space lies our freedom. We discover that the raw sensation of the first arrow, when stripped of the narrative of the second arrow, is often bearable. It arises, it changes, and it passes away, all on its own. This teaching is one of the most empowering in all of spiritual philosophy. It tells us that while we cannot always control what life does to us, we have a profound capacity to choose how we respond. The world will always shoot first arrows. That is its nature. Our spiritual work, our path to peace, is to get so good, so wise, and so compassionate with ourselves that we stop shooting the second. The first step on this path of non-aggression towards ourselves, the first step in learning to lay down our bow, is to stop fighting the reality of the first arrow. It requires the immense courage to simply be with our experience as it is, even when it is unpleasant. It requires the gentle power of acceptance. Here we stand, at the culmination of our first hour of truth. We have journeyed into the heart of our own disquiet, holding a lantern to the shadows we so often ignore. We have diagnosed the ceaseless hum of a world that never sleeps, and an inner world that has forgotten how. We have seen the futility in trying to force the mind into submission, the great and exhausting illusion of control. We have given a name to our fundamental unease, the universal condition of dukkha. We have identified the three poisons that fuel it, and the mental time travel that gives them power. And we have uncovered our most tragic habit, the tendency to shoot a second arrow of suffering into the initial wound of pain. It is a stark and perhaps discouraging landscape we have surveyed. But the purpose of this honest diagnosis was never to leave us in despair. It was to bring us to this exact point, this threshold, where the most profound and transformative practice of all can begin. This practice is the gentle, courageous, and often misunderstood art of acceptance. To find peace, we must first make peace with our restlessness. To find stillness, we must first stop fighting our turmoil. This is the great paradox of the spiritual path, and our modern, problem-solving minds recoil at this idea. Acceptance sounds like resignation. It sounds like weakness. It sounds like giving up. We think it means saying, "I am an anxious person, and I will always be this way, so there is nothing to be done." We think it means approving of our negative states, or becoming passively content to wallow in our own misery. But this is a complete misunderstanding of what true acceptance is. True acceptance is not passive resignation. It is an act of radical, courageous honesty. It is the strength to look at the present moment exactly as it is and to cease arguing with it. If the mind is racing, acceptance says, the mind is racing. If the chest is tight with anxiety, acceptance says, there is tightness in the chest. If a wave of sadness arises, acceptance says, sadness is present. There is no judgment, there is no commentary. There is no immediate rush to fix it, to analyze it, or to push it away. It is a simple, clear, and unwavering acknowledgement of what is true, right now. This is not weakness. It takes far more courage and strength to sit with discomfort than it does to immediately reach for a distraction. It is the ultimate act of self-compassion, the first step in ending the long and brutal civil war we have been waging against ourselves. There is a powerful story that illustrates this principle. As the Buddha sat in deep meditation, he was often visited by a figure named Mara. Mara is not a literal demon with horns and a pitchfork. He is the embodiment of all the forces that obstruct our peace. He is the voice of doubt, the pull of desire, the paralysis of fear, the storm of anxiety. One day, as the Buddha sat, Mara appeared, determined to break his concentration. His disciples, seeing this fearsome entity, sprang into action. They shouted at Mara, they tried to reason with him, they attempted to chase him away with rituals and chants, but the more they fought him, the more monstrous and powerful Mara became. Their resistance was his food. The Buddha, however, remained perfectly still. He opened his eyes, looked directly at this terrifying figure, and did not flinch. He did not fight. He did not run. He simply acknowledged him. With a calm and gentle mind, he said, "I see you, Mara." In that moment of pure, non-judgmental recognition, Mara began to shrink. The Buddha then did something extraordinary. He gestured to the space beside him and said, "You may sit. Would you care for some tea?" By offering hospitality to his own demon, by acknowledging its presence and giving it a space to exist, he completely disarmed it. Mara, the great tempter, the lord of fear, having been seen, acknowledged, and met not with hostility but with a spacious calm, had no power left. He bowed his head and vanished like the morning mist. We must all learn to serve tea to our Mara. Our anxiety, our sadness, our restlessness, these are our demons. Our habit is to do what the disciples did. We fight them, we suppress them, we distract ourselves, we numb ourselves, and in doing so, we give them all their power. The practice of acceptance is the practice of becoming the Buddha in this story. It is the practice of turning towards our inner experience, no matter how unpleasant, and gently saying, "Ah, I see you. Fear is here. Sadness is visiting today. The restless mind has come for tea." We can translate this ancient story into a simple, practical technique. It is the practice of mental noting, or labeling. When a strong emotion or mental state arises, instead of being swept away by its storyline, we can gently, silently, apply a soft label to it in our minds. As the wave of worry begins to crest, we can note, worrying, worrying. As the familiar ache of loneliness appears, we can note, loneliness. This simple act is profoundly transformative. It creates a space between the observer and the observed. You are no longer a sad person. You are the awareness that is noticing sadness arising. You are no longer an anxious wreck. You are the consciousness in which the energy of anxiety is moving. It demotes the emotion from being the totality of your reality to being just one temporary event within a much larger, more spacious awareness. Imagine your mind as a vast, open house. When an unwelcome guest like anger shows up, banging on the door, our habit is to run and hide, or to barricade the door and scream at it to go away. The practice of acceptance is to calmly walk to the door, open it, and say, "Ah, anger, I see you are here." You don't have to agree with anger. You don't have to let it smash the furniture, but you let it into the living room. You give it space. You find that when you stop fighting it, when you simply allow it to be there, its energy begins to dissipate. It may pace around for a while. It may shout a bit, but eventually, having not been fed by your resistance, it grows tired and shows itself out. You have made space for it, and in doing so, you have allowed it to pass. This is the end of the war. This is the great laying down of arms. All the energy that was once consumed by fighting, resisting, suppressing, and controlling is now liberated. It is free to be used for healing, for growth, for compassion, for wisdom. This is the true meaning of surrender in a spiritual context. It is not surrendering to our demons. It is surrendering the fight against them. and this act brings a peace that is not dependent on circumstances. It is a peace born from the cessation of internal conflict. With this, our first hour of truth comes to a close. We have bravely walked through the shadows of our own minds. We have diagnosed the nature of our restlessness with clarity and honesty. We have discovered that the path to freedom does not begin with a fight, but with the gentle, courageous power of acceptance. The war is over if you choose it to be. The ground is now prepared. We have tilled the soil of the mind, not by removing the rocks and weeds, but by learning to see them with a compassionate gaze. We are now ready to begin the second hour of our journey. Now, we will learn how to intentionally plant seeds of peace, clarity, and stability. We will move from diagnosis to active cultivation. And the first and most essential tool we will learn to use, the most faithful friend and reliable anchor for the wandering mind, is the gentle, life-giving rhythm of the breath. We now cross a significant threshold in our journey. Having spent the first hour in courageous diagnosis looking unflinchingly at the nature of our inner turmoil, we now enter the second hour, a time dedicated to active cultivation and gentle practice. The first hour was about seeing the storm. The second is about learning how to navigate it. Imagine our mind as a small boat, tossed on the waves of a vast and turbulent ocean. The waves are the endless thoughts, emotions, and sensations that rise and fall. The wind is the force of the three poisons, pushing us in every direction. For our entire lives, we have been adrift, completely at the mercy of this weather, swept towards the rocks of despair, or pulled aimlessly by the currents of desire. What we need, more than anything, is an anchor. An anchor does not stop the storm. It does not calm the waves or silence the wind, but it provides a point of stability. It grounds the boat, preventing it from being carried away into oblivion. It allows us to find our place in the midst of the chaos. This hour is about finding our anchor. And that anchor, the most reliable, the most accessible, and the most profound tool for spiritual practice, is the human breath. It is so simple that we overlook it. It is so constant that we take it for granted. From the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, the breath is our most faithful companion. It costs nothing. It requires no special belief system or esoteric knowledge. It is here, with you, right now. The genius of the Buddhist teaching was to take this most ordinary biological function and reveal it as a gateway to the most extraordinary states of peace and clarity. Why is it so powerful? Because the breath is the bridge between our inner worlds. It is the perfect intersection of the conscious and the unconscious, the voluntary and the involuntary. You can consciously decide to hold your breath or to breathe deeply, but the moment you stop paying attention, a deeper wisdom takes over and breathes for you. It is the bridge between the mind and the body. The mind can wander into the imagined past or the speculative future, but the body is always, unequivocally, in the present moment. The physical sensation of the breath is the undeniable proof of life happening right now. It is the umbilical cord to the present moment. Furthermore, the breath is completely honest. It is a perfect mirror of our inner state. When you are frightened or anxious, your breath becomes shallow, rapid, and tight. When you are relaxed and at peace, your breath becomes deep, slow, and soft. It cannot lie. By learning to pay attention to the breath, we are given a direct, unfiltered report from our own nervous system, a way of checking in with ourselves that is more honest than the stories our thinking mind might tell us. The practice of using this anchor is known as anapanasati, which simply means mindfulness of breathing, and the instructions are as simple as the breath itself. First, find a comfortable position. You can sit on a chair with your feet flat on the floor, or on a cushion on the ground. The key is to find a posture that embodies a sense of dignity and ease. The back is straight, but not rigid, allowing the energy to flow. The hands can rest gently on the lap. The eyes can be softly closed or lowered with a gentle, unfocused gaze. Now, simply bring your awareness to the fact that you are breathing. There is no need to change your breath in any way. You are not trying to do the breathing. You are allowing yourself to be breathed. The goal is to become the gentle, curious observer of this natural process. To help focus the mind, you can choose a specific spot on the body to rest your attention. For some, it is the tip of the nostrils, feeling the subtle coolness of the air as it enters and the gentle warmth as it leaves. For others, it is the sensation of the chest, rising and falling with each respiratory cycle. And for many, it is the abdomen, feeling the gentle expansion on the in-breath and the soft release on the out-breath. There is no right or wrong place. Simply choose the spot where the sensation is most clear for you, and let your attention rest there, as lightly as a butterfly resting on a flower. Now comes the most important instruction of all. Inevitably, your mind will wander. It will be distracted by a sound, an itch, a memory, a plan, This is not a mistake. It is not a failure. It is simply what minds do. The practice is not to prevent the mind from wandering. The practice is to notice when it has wandered. The moment of noticing, my mind has drifted into thinking, is a moment of pure mindfulness. In that moment, without any scolding or judgment, you are to gently, kindly, and patiently guide your awareness back to the anchor of the breath. This is the entire practice. You rest your attention on the breath. The mind wanders. You notice. You gently return. Again and again and again. Each return is a victory. Each return is a strengthening of the muscle of mindfulness. There is a traditional story of how to tame a wild buffalo. The buffalo, full of chaotic and powerful energy, represents our untamed mind. To tame it, a farmer drives a strong, solid post deep into the ground. This post represents the anchor of the breath, rooted in the present moment. The farmer then ties the buffalo to the post with a long rope. The rope is our mindfulness, our gentle attention. At first, the buffalo is furious. It pulls and strains against the rope, running in every direction, trying to escape. This is like our mind, desperately trying to run back to its old habits of worry and distraction. But the rope and the post are strong. After some time, exhausted from its struggle, the buffalo realizes it cannot escape. It grows tired of the fight, and eventually, it lies down peacefully at the foot of the post. It is still a powerful buffalo, but its energy is no longer chaotic. It is calm and centered. By repeatedly tying our wild mind to the post of the breath, we are not punishing it. We are taming it. We are teaching it where peace can be found. Each breath is a new beginning. The past, even the last thought you had 1 second ago, is gone forever. No matter how many times your mind has wandered, the next in-breath is a fresh start, a clean slate. It is an invitation to come home. This is an act of profound kindness. In a world that demands we constantly think, produce, and strive, the simple act of returning our awareness to our breath for a few moments is a radical act of self-care and inner sanctuary. It is a respite from the tyranny of thought. We have found our anchor. We now possess the fundamental tool to ground ourselves in the midst of life's storms. The practice of returning to the breath does not eliminate the storms, but it changes everything. It gives us a choice, the choice not to be swept away. With this newfound stability, even if it is fleeting at first, we can now begin to address the very ropes and knots that keep us entangled in suffering. Having anchored our boat, we can now begin the delicate and courageous work of untying the knots of attachment. We can now learn the profound and liberating art of letting go. With the anchor of the breath firmly in our grasp, we have found a place of refuge in the storm. We have discovered that no matter how fiercely the winds of thought may howl, or how high the waves of emotion may surge, there is a place of stability within us, a quiet depth that remains untouched. But an anchored boat is still a boat that is heavily laden. It is filled with the accumulated cargo of a lifetime, the heavy baggage of our attachments, our expectations, and our unresolved pasts. The anchor gives us the stability to finally begin the work of lightening this load. It gives us the courage to look at what we are carrying and to ask the most liberating question of all: is this truly necessary for the journey? This is the beginning of the art of letting go. In our culture, the idea of renunciation, of letting go, is often viewed with suspicion. It conjures images of austerity, of self-denial, of a life devoid of pleasure and passion. We think it means giving up our homes, our careers, our relationships, and walking away from the world. But this is a profound misunderstanding of this deep spiritual wisdom. True renunciation, or nakama as it is known in the Buddhist tradition, is not about renouncing the world. It is about renouncing the causes of suffering within our own minds. It is not about letting go of the things we love. It is about letting go of our desperate, anxious clinging to them. It is the crucial difference between appreciating a beautiful flower and trying to crush it in our fist to prevent it from ever wilting. The appreciation brings joy. The clinging brings only pain and a broken flower. Letting go is not an act of loss. It is an act of liberation. What then are we clinging to so tightly? The cargo is varied. The most obvious, of course, are material possessions. We live in a world that constantly tells us that our happiness is just one more purchase away. We cling to our things, believing they define us, that they provide security. But this attachment is a source of constant, low-grade anxiety. We fear our possessions will be lost, stolen, or broken. The pleasure they provide is fleeting, soon replaced by the desire for something newer, better, shinier. We become trapped in a cycle of wanting and worrying, a cycle that can never lead to lasting peace. More subtly, and perhaps more powerfully, we cling to outcomes. We are attached to our vision of how things should be. We have a detailed blueprint in our minds for how our career should progress, how our children should behave, how our vacation should unfold, how a difficult conversation should conclude. We invest immense mental and emotional energy into trying to force reality to conform to our blueprint. But life is a wild, unpredictable river, not a straight canal. It rarely follows our plans. When reality inevitably deviates from our cherished outcome, we suffer. We feel frustration, anger, and disappointment. We are not suffering because of the event itself, but because of our rigid attachment to a different event that did not happen. Letting go of outcomes does not mean we stop planning or striving. It means we hold our plans lightly. We do our best. We act with skill and integrity, and then we release our grip on the result, accepting that the universe is far more complex than our limited plans can account for. We also cling desperately to the opinions of others. Our sense of self-worth often hangs by the fragile thread of praise and blame. We feel elated when someone compliments us and crushed when they criticize us. This makes our inner peace a hostage to the whims of everyone we meet. We become performers, constantly adjusting our masks, saying what we think people want to hear, terrified of being judged. To let go of this attachment is to find a deeper, more stable source of self-worth within. It is to learn that while it is pleasant to be liked, our fundamental value as a human being is not up for debate. And perhaps most subtly of all, we cling to our own stories, our own identities. We have a narrative of who I am. I am the anxious one. I am the victim. I am the one who always fails at relationships. I am the smart one. We cling to these stories because they feel familiar. They provide a sense of certainty, but they are also prisons. They limit our potential and keep us locked in the patterns of the past. Letting go of your story is the most terrifying and liberating act of all. It is to step into the open, undefined space of the present moment, and to allow yourself to be new, to be different, to be free from the weight of your own history. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures the essence of this practice. Two monks were on a long journey. They came to a wide river where a young woman in fine clothes stood, looking distressed. She was afraid to cross, for fear of ruining her silks and being swept away by the current. Without a word, the older of the two monks hoisted her onto his back, waded across the powerful river, and gently set her down on the other side. She thanked him curtly and hurried on her way. The monks continued their journey in silence. Hours passed. The sun began to set. Finally, the younger monk could contain his agitation no longer. He burst out, "How could you do that? You know we are forbidden to touch a woman. It is a serious violation of our vows. How could you break your precepts like that?" The old monk looked at his young companion, his eyes filled with a gentle compassion. He smiled softly and said, "Brother, I set that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story reveals our condition. We all carry things long after we should have set them down. A past hurt, a lingering resentment, a worry about the future, a rigid opinion. We carry them on our backs, and they weigh us down, making every step of our journey an exhausting struggle. The practice of letting go is the practice of becoming the old monk. It is the practice of noticing what we are carrying and consciously, deliberately setting it down. How do we do this? We begin, as always, with mindfulness. We use the stability of the breath to notice the feeling of clinging in the mind and body. It has a physical signature, a tightness in the jaw, a tension in the shoulders, a knot in the stomach. When you feel this, you can recognize it. Ah, this is clinging. You can then practice a simple visualization. Imagine you are sitting on the bank of a gently flowing river. See your thoughts, especially the sticky, repetitive ones you are clinging to, as leaves falling onto the surface of the water. Your task is not to analyze the leaves or to pull them out of the river. Your task is simply to watch them. Watch the leaf of "he shouldn't have said that" appear, float for a moment, and then drift gently downstream, out of sight. Watch the leaf of "what if I fail?" Do the same. By doing this, you create a separation. You are not the leaf. You are the silent, spacious awareness on the riverbank, watching the contents of your mind float by. Letting go is not a one-time event. It is a moment-by-moment practice. It is the constant choice to unclench the fist of the mind and to open the hand. Every time we let go of a small resentment, a minor worry, or a rigid expectation, we become lighter. We free up immense stores of energy that were once wasted on holding on. This newfound lightness creates a space within us. We have now anchored our boat and begun to clear out the unnecessary cargo. The space we have created is precious. It is the empty ground upon which we can now, with skill and intention, begin to build a true and lasting shelter for the spirit. We can now learn to construct our own inner sanctuary, having anchored our boat in the turbulent waters of the mind, and having begun the liberating work of lightening its load by letting go of our attachments. A new spaciousness begins to dawn within us. We have created a clearing. For a long time, this inner landscape was a dense, overgrown jungle of restless thought and tangled emotion. Now, through our practice, we have cleared a small patch of ground. The question becomes, what shall we build here? The second hour of our journey is one of active cultivation, and we will now use this cleared space to construct something of immense value and beauty. We will learn to build a sanctuary for the spirit, an inner refuge of peace that we can carry with us at all times, a portable home for the heart that is safe from the chaos of the world. This may sound like a fantasy, but it utilizes one of the most powerful and most often misused faculties of the human mind, the imagination. We are imagining things all the time, but we typically use our imagination unconsciously and often destructively. When we are anxious, we are using our imagination. We vividly construct detailed future scenarios of failure, embarrassment, and loss. We imagine arguments that have not happened and feel the stress of them as if they were real. We do this because the human brain and nervous system do not always make a clear distinction between a vividly imagined experience and a physically real one. To think about a past humiliation can make us blush in the present. To imagine a future threat can trigger a cascade of stress hormones. We are already powerful creators of our inner reality. The practice of building a mental sanctuary is about reclaiming this immense power and using it consciously for the purpose of healing, safety, and peace. We will now use our imagination not as a factory for anxiety, but as an architect's office for a temple of calm. Let us begin the construction now. I invite you to find a comfortable posture, to soften your gaze or gently close your eyes, and to take a few slow, easy breaths. Let go of the day. And now, allow your mind to drift to a place where you feel utterly, completely, and unconditionally safe. This place can be real, a memory from your past, or entirely imaginary. There are no rules here. Perhaps it is a sun-drenched meadow, filled with wildflowers and the hum of bees. Perhaps it is a secluded beach at dawn, the sand cool beneath your feet, the waves whispering a gentle rhythm. It could be a cozy, book-lined library with a crackling fireplace, or a serene, ancient temple nestled high in the mountains. It might even be a simple, empty room filled with a warm, golden light. Allow the image, the feeling of this place, to arise naturally. Do not force it. Now, let us bring this sanctuary to life by engaging all our senses. Look around you. What do you see? Notice the quality of the light. Is it the bright, clear light of midday, or the soft, angled light of sunset? Notice the colors, the deep greens of a forest, the 100 shades of blue in the ocean, the warm browns of wood and earth. Look at the small details, the pattern of veins on a leaf, the texture of a stone, the grain in a piece of wood. Now listen. What do you hear in your sanctuary? Is it the sound of wind rustling through pine trees? The gentle lapping of water against a shore? The distant call of a bird? Perhaps it is the crackle and pop of a fire. Or perhaps the sound is a profound, healing silence. A silence that feels like a soft blanket. Bring your awareness to the sense of smell. Are there any scents on the air? The fragrance of damp earth after rain, the salty tang of the sea, the smell of pine needles, or the comforting aroma of old books and wood smoke. And now, the sense of touch. What do you feel? The warmth of the sun on your skin? A cool, gentle breeze? The solid ground beneath you, supporting you completely? The texture of a soft blanket? Or the smoothness of a worn stone in your hand? Most importantly, connect with the core feeling of this place. What is the emotional essence of your sanctuary? Is it a feeling of profound peace? Of absolute safety? Of unconditional love and acceptance? Of strength and stability? Of deep quiet? Let this feeling permeate your entire being. This feeling is the foundation stone of your sanctuary. Breathe it in. Let it fill you. This place is your own. It is your inviolable refuge. You can give it a name if you wish. The shore of serenity, the grove of quiet, the hearth of home. There is a simple and beautiful analogy for this practice. It is the turtle. A turtle carries its home, its sanctuary, on its very back. It moves through the world, vulnerable and soft-bodied, but it is never far from its refuge. When a predator appears, when danger threatens, the turtle does not need to run or fight. It simply does something remarkable. It withdraws. It pulls its head, its legs, its tender self into the unbreachable fortress of its own shell. There, it waits. It rests in safety until the threat has passed. It does not deny the existence of the danger, but it does not allow the danger to harm its core. We must learn to be like the turtle. Our inner sanctuary is our shell. The world will always present its dangers: the sudden, stressful email, the difficult phone call, the piece of bad news, the surge of our own anger or fear. Our practice is to learn how to momentarily withdraw. We cannot physically leave the stressful meeting, but we can, for the space of a single breath, retreat into our inner sanctuary. This is the practice of the micro-retreat. When you feel that familiar tightening of stress, pause. Take one conscious breath, and on the exhale, for just 2 or 3 seconds, transport your awareness to your sanctuary. Reconnect with its core feeling of peace. Feel the sun on your skin. Hear the gentle waves. Remember the safety. Then, open your eyes and re-engage with the situation. You will find that you have returned with a little more space, a little more calm, a little more perspective. You have brought a drop of your sanctuary's peace back with you into the world. This practice, when cultivated daily, is life-altering. By visiting your sanctuary for a few minutes each day, you are strengthening the neural pathways of peace. You are creating a new habit for the mind. You are building a home within yourself. You are no longer entirely dependent on the external world for your sense of safety and well-being. A quiet room is pleasant, but you are no longer a victim of a noisy environment. The approval of others is nice, but your core safety does not depend on it. You carry your refuge within you. We have built a beautiful, sacred space in the clearing of our minds. But a sanctuary, to remain a sanctuary, must be protected. To allow its peace to deepen, to allow its qualities to truly permeate our being, it needs to be guarded from the endless noise of the external world and the habitual chatter of our own minds. This sacred structure needs to be infused with and surrounded by an element of profound, restorative power. It needs the protection and the blessing of silence. We have constructed our inner sanctuary, a portable refuge of peace that we can access at any time. We have anchored our awareness in the breath and lightened our load by letting go of our attachments. Our inner home is built, but a home, to remain a place of peace, must be protected from the relentless noise of the world. The walls of our sanctuary, the very atmosphere that preserves its sacred quality, are woven from the profound and healing power of silence. In our modern world, silence has become a terrifying void. We have grown so accustomed to the ceaseless hum of stimulation that an absence of noise can feel deeply uncomfortable, even threatening. We fill every spare moment with distraction. We drive with the radio on. We walk with podcasts in our ears. We cook with the television chattering in the background. We fall asleep to the endless scroll of our phones. We have become profoundly addicted to noise, and we have forgotten the immense restorative power that lies in its absence. We have come to see silence as an emptiness to be filled, rather than a spaciousness to be entered. The spiritual path invites us to completely reframe this relationship. It asks us to see silence not as a lack, but as a presence. It is the fertile ground from which all true insight, creativity, and peace can grow. It is helpful to think of silence in 2 distinct yet interconnected forms: external quiet and internal stillness. External quiet is the most straightforward place to begin. It is the simple, conscious act of reducing the auditory input in our lives. It is turning off the television instead of letting it drone on as background noise. It is choosing to drive in silence instead of immediately turning on the radio. It is putting down the phone and simply looking out the window. This practice is a direct act of kindness to our nervous system. The constant influx of noise, information, and stimulation keeps us in a low-grade state of fight or flight, a state of hypervigilance. By intentionally creating periods of external quiet, we are allowing our nervous system to downshift, to reset, and to come back to a place of equilibrium. It is like cleaning and tidying a cluttered room. Once the outer chaos is reduced, we can begin to appreciate the space itself. But as anyone who has tried this knows, external quiet often reveals a new, and sometimes more challenging, problem: the loudness of our own minds. When the outer distractions are removed, we are left face to face with the internal chatter, the very hum we diagnosed in our first hour. This is where the deeper practice of cultivating internal stillness begins. External quiet is the gateway, but internal stillness is the destination. At first, this can feel daunting. The inner noise can seem deafening without the external world to mask it. But this is a crucial stage. We must be willing to sit with the noise of our own minds, using the anchor of our breath and the spaciousness of our acceptance, to allow it to be there without being consumed by it. There are many simple, practical ways to begin cultivating both forms of silence. We can institute a digital sunset, a time each evening, perhaps an hour before bed, when all screens are turned off. This creates a precious buffer of quiet, allowing the mind and body to unwind naturally, preparing them for deep, restorative rest. We can practice the silent walk, choosing one walk each week where the only goal is to walk in silence, listening to the sounds of our own footsteps and the world around us, without the filter of headphones. We can even find silence in the midst of our daily activities by bringing a silent, focused awareness to a simple task like washing the dishes or drinking a cup of tea. Perhaps the deepest practice is simply to sit in silence for a few minutes each day. This is not necessarily about formal meditation with a complex technique. It is the simple, profound act of just sitting. We sit and we allow our inner world to be just as it is. We notice the thoughts, we notice the feelings, we notice the sounds around us, and we notice the silence that holds it all. We are not trying to achieve anything. We are simply practicing the art of being. There is a Zen story about a young monk who desperately sought peace. He went to his master and asked, "Master, can you please show me the most silent, most peaceful place in the world?" The student imagined he would be led to a remote mountain cave, far from the sounds of humanity. To his astonishment, the master led him directly into the heart of a chaotic city market. The air was thick with the shouts of vendors, the haggling of customers, the cries of children, and the clatter of carts. The student was bewildered. He shouted over the din, "Master, why have you brought me here? This is the loudest, most chaotic place imaginable." The master, standing calmly amidst the chaos, simply closed his eyes. A faint, serene smile graced his lips. After a long moment, he opened his eyes and looked at the student with great kindness. "I have found no place more silent than this," he said. "The lesson is profound. While creating external quiet is a helpful and necessary practice, true, unshakable silence is an inner quality. It is a peace we cultivate within, a stillness that is not dependent on the world outside being quiet. It is a sanctuary within our sanctuary, a deep well of peace that cannot be touched by the storms on the surface. We can learn to access this inner stillness even in the middle of our own bustling, noisy lives. We can begin this practice by shifting our perception of listening. We are accustomed to listening for sounds. The practice now is to learn to listen to the silence itself. The silence between musical notes is what creates the melody. The space between words is what gives them meaning. In the same way, the silence that underlies all the sounds of our lives is what gives our experience its depth. As you sit here, listen not just to the sounds that arise, but to the vast, silent canvas upon which they are painted. Can you hear the silence that holds the sound of a distant car? Can you feel the silence that exists between your own thoughts? This silence is not empty. It is pregnant with potential. It is the source from which creativity, wisdom, and compassion arise. It is the quiet space where the mud of the mind finally settles, allowing the water of our consciousness to become clear. By actively welcoming silence into our lives, both external and internal, we are doing more than just calming down. We are creating the conditions for a deeper listening. We are turning down the volume of the ego's incessant chatter so that we can begin to hear a much subtler, much wiser voice. It is the quiet, guiding voice of our own deepest heart, the voice of our true intentions. And it is this voice that we will learn to listen to next. In the vast, resonant quiet we have begun to cultivate, something remarkable happens. When the shouting of the external world fades and the inner chatter of the mind begins to settle, we can finally hear a more subtle sound. It is not a noise, but a direction. It is the quiet, intuitive pull of our own deepest values, the whisper of the heart that knows the way to peace. For too long, this voice has been drowned out. Now, we learn to listen to it. Listening to this voice and aligning our lives with its wisdom is the practice of what the Buddha called right intention. It is the rudder of our ship. The anchor of mindfulness can give us stability in the storm, but it is right intention that sets our course and determines our destination. Without it, our practice can become aimless. With it, every moment of our lives becomes an opportunity to move in the direction of freedom. What is right intention? It is not merely wishful thinking, nor is it the same as setting worldly goals like getting a promotion or running a marathon. Right intention is the conscious, heartfelt resolve to align our thoughts, our words, and our actions with the path of healing and awakening. It is the why that infuses our what with meaning. To understand right intention, it is helpful to first understand its opposite, wrong intention. Wrong intention is any intention fueled by the three poisons. It is the intention to act out of greed, to get something for yourself. It is the intention to act out of hatred, to harm another, or push away something unpleasant. And it is the intention to act out of delusion, from a place of confusion and ignorance. Imagine two people giving a gift. The action is identical. The first person, operating from wrong intention, gives the gift to make a good impression, to indebt the receiver, or to relieve their own guilt. The act is a transaction rooted in self-interest. The second person, operating from right intention, gives the gift purely from a place of generosity and goodwill, with no thought of reward. The external action is the same, but the inner quality, the karmic resonance, is worlds apart. One act creates more entanglement and subtle suffering. The other creates freedom and joy. Right intention is the practice of purifying the why behind all our actions, turning our very lives into a form of spiritual practice. The Buddha described 3 essential flavors of right intention, 3 directions in which we can point the rudder of our heart. The first is the intention of renunciation. This connects directly to our practice of letting go. It is the conscious resolve to find happiness not by endlessly adding more to our lives, but by gently releasing our tight-fisted grip on what is already here. It is the intention to seek contentment rather than constant stimulation. It is the choice to value simplicity over complexity. This does not mean we must live a life of deprivation. It means we recognize that the source of suffering is not the thing itself, but our clinging to the thing. The intention of renunciation is a quiet, continuous commitment to unburdening ourselves, to loosening the knots of attachment that bind us. The second is the intention of goodwill. This is the direct antidote to the poison of aversion. It is the heartfelt resolve to meet the world and its inhabitants with kindness. It is the choice, when faced with frustration or anger, to consciously cultivate patience. It is the intention to wish all beings, without exception, to be well and happy. This includes those we love, those we are indifferent to, and even those we find difficult or have harmed us. It does not mean we must condone harmful actions or force ourselves to like everyone. It simply means we refuse to carry the toxic burden of ill will in our own hearts. We recognize that holding on to hatred is like holding a hot coal, intending to throw it at someone else. We are the one who gets burned. The intention of goodwill is the choice to put down the hot coal. The third, and perhaps most encompassing, is the intention of harmlessness or compassion. This is the resolve to cause no harm through our thoughts, words, or deeds to any living creature, and, crucially, to ourselves. It stems from the profound recognition of our interconnectedness, the understanding that all beings, just like us, wish to be free from pain and suffering. This intention makes us mindful of the impact of our words before we speak. It makes us consider the consequences of our actions before we act, and it applies inwardly as well. It is the intention to stop the war against ourselves, to meet our own failings and imperfections, not with the harsh whip of self-criticism, but with the gentle, healing touch of compassion. The intention of harmlessness is the ultimate expression of a heart that is awakening to the unity of all life. Imagine 2 gardeners, each tasked with caring for a plot of land. This land is our mind. The first gardener, operating from a place of struggle and aversion, despises the weeds. He spends his days in a rage, hacking at them, yanking them from the ground, spraying poison everywhere. He is so focused on destroying what is wrong that he tramples the delicate flowers, poisons the soil, and utterly exhausts himself in his furious battle. His garden is a war zone. The second gardener is wiser. He operates from right intention. He understands that weeds are a natural part of any garden. He does not hate them, but he sees that they are misplaced. Skillfully, patiently, and without anger, he removes them, knowing that his work is gentle and continuous. But he dedicates most of his time and energy not to fighting the weeds, but to cultivating what he wishes to grow. He diligently waters the flowers, he enriches the soil, he ensures they get enough sunlight. He knows that the most effective way to manage the weeds is to create such a vibrant, thriving garden of flowers that the weeds have little space or light in which to grow. We must become this second gardener. Right intention is the choice to focus our life's energy on cultivating the wholesome, on nurturing the flowers of kindness, generosity, clarity, and compassion within ourselves. As these qualities grow stronger, the weeds of greed, hatred, and delusion naturally begin to wither from lack of nourishment. But how do we know what our true intention is in any given moment? We may tell ourselves we are acting from a place of kindness, but deep down, a more selfish motive may be at play. Here, mindfulness becomes our essential tool. Mindfulness is the light that illuminates the rudder of intention. By paying attention to the subtle feeling tone in the mind and body just before we speak or act, we can receive an honest report. Is there a feeling of tightness, of grasping, of righteousness, of aggression? This is the signature of wrong intention. Is there a feeling of softness, of openness, of ease, of spaciousness in the heart? This is the signature of right intention. Mindfulness allows us to see where our ship is headed and gives us the chance to gently adjust our course before we go astray. Right intention is the heart of a living, breathing spiritual practice. It transforms our life from a series of reactive, chaotic events into a conscious, purposeful, and graceful journey. It is the compass that, in every situation, always points toward peace. And of its three flavors, the intention of goodwill is a particularly potent medicine for the aches of the modern heart. To actively cultivate this intention, to turn it from a noble idea into a felt reality, is one of the most direct and beautiful paths to emotional healing. This is the practice of metta, or loving kindness. Having set our course with the compass of right intention, we now arrive at a practice that is designed to actively cultivate one of its most beautiful expressions, the intention of goodwill. This is more than just a thought or a resolve. It is a profound practice of emotional alchemy, a way of transforming the hardened, fearful heart into a source of boundless warmth and kindness. This is the practice of metta, a word from the Pali language that translates as loving kindness. Metta is the prescribed medicine for the poison of aversion. It is the direct antidote to the inner critic, the harsh judge, the resentful mind, and the lonely heart. In a world that so often feels cold, critical, and alienating, the practice of metta is a radical act of warmth, a way of learning to be a true friend to ourselves and to the world. The journey of metta begins in a place that may feel, to many of us, both radical and deeply uncomfortable. It begins with ourselves. Our culture often teaches us that turning our kindness inward is selfish, self-indulgent, or even narcissistic. We are taught to care for others, but we often do so from a place of inner scarcity, from a well that is dry. We try to pour for others from a cup that is empty. The wisdom of metta teaches us that this is unsustainable. True, genuine kindness for others can only spring from a heart that has learned how to be kind to itself. As the airline safety instructions wisely tell us, you must secure your own oxygen mask before assisting others. To offer loving kindness to yourself is not selfish. It is the necessary and compassionate prerequisite for having anything of genuine value to offer the world. For many of us, this is the most difficult step. The voice of the inner critic is loud and relentless. When we try to offer ourselves a phrase of kindness, the critic may immediately retort with a list of our failings and imperfections. The practice of metta asks us to treat this critical voice with the same gentleness we are trying to cultivate. We see it, we acknowledge it without arguing, and we gently return to our practice. Let us begin. Find a comfortable posture, a posture of dignity and ease. Allow your body to soften, and for a few moments, connect with the simple, steady rhythm of your breath. Now, let go of the breath and bring to mind the feeling of kindness. It may help to recall a time when someone showed you genuine, unconditional care, or perhaps you can think of a beloved pet or a small child and the effortless way your heart opens in their presence. We are not trying to manufacture an emotion, but simply to touch into a warmth that is already there. Holding this gentle feeling, we will now use a few simple phrases as a vehicle to carry this intention of goodwill towards ourselves. Silently, softly, repeat them in your mind. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy and strong. May I live with ease. As you repeat these phrases, imagine you are speaking to the most vulnerable part of yourself, as a loving parent would speak to a cherished child. These are not affirmations meant to force a belief. They are wishes, offerings, from your own higher self to your wounded self. If your mind wanders, gently guide it back. If feelings of unworthiness arise, simply let them be there in the background and return to the phrases. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. This is the act of putting on your own oxygen mask. This is the act of filling your own cup. Once you have established a foundation of kindness for yourself, even a small one, you can begin to expand the circle. Like the ripples spreading out from a pebble dropped in a still pond, we will now radiate this loving kindness outward. First, bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend. Choose someone whom it is easy for you to love, someone whose very thought brings a smile to your face. Picture them in your mind's eye and offer them the same heartfelt wishes. Feel the warmth of your heart extending to them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease. Next, bring to mind a neutral person. This could be a cashier you saw at the market, a person you passed on the street, someone you neither like nor dislike. They are usually invisible to our emotional landscape. The practice here is to see their humanity, to recognize that they, just like you, wish to be happy and free from suffering. Hold their image in your awareness and extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you live with ease. In this step, we are stretching the muscle of our heart, learning to offer kindness beyond our circle of preference. Now comes the most challenging and transformative stage. Bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict, someone who has hurt you. This is advanced practice, so be gentle with yourself. The goal here is not to condone their harmful actions or to force a superficial forgiveness. The primary goal is to liberate yourself from the poison of resentment and hatred you are carrying. Recognize the pain their actions may have caused you, and then see if it is possible to recognize that their harmful actions spring from their own suffering, their own poison, their own confusion. As an act of profound healing for your own heart, see if you can offer them a simple wish. May you too be free from suffering. May you too find a true and lasting peace. This is the ultimate act of putting down the hot coal. You are choosing to no longer burn your own hand. Finally, we expand the circle to its ultimate conclusion. Allow your awareness to radiate outwards in all directions to all people in your town, your country, all beings on this planet. To the animals, to the creatures in the sea, and the birds in the air. To all beings, seen and unseen, near and far, without exception or exclusion. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease and be free from suffering. We may sometimes feel that this practice of metta is a weak, sentimental, or passive state. The story of the Buddha and his cousin Devadatta teaches us otherwise. Devadatta, consumed by the poison of jealousy and hatred, made several attempts on the Buddha's life. He tried to crush him by rolling a boulder from a cliff. He sent a drunken, enraged elephant charging through the streets to trample him. In each instance, the Buddha's response was not fear or anger. It was a firm, unshakable, and powerful radiation of pure loving kindness. It is said that the charging elephant, upon entering the field of the Buddha's metta, slowed down, became completely calm, and knelt before him in submission. The story illustrates a profound truth. Loving kindness is not weakness. It is an immense power. It is a shield that protects our own hearts from the poisons of the world, and it has the power to transform the hearts of others. The practice of metta is the intentional gardening of the heart. It is the conscious choice to water the flower of love so that it grows strong and vibrant, leaving little room for the weeds of hatred and ill will. It heals our relationship with ourself, and it heals our relationship with the world. It is the embodiment of right intention. This softening of the heart, this radical acceptance of ourselves and others, develops within us an emotional resilience and a profound stability. And this stability prepares us to face one of the most fundamental, challenging, and ultimately liberating truths of existence. The truth that everything we have just offered our kindness to our bodies, our feelings, our very selves is in a constant, unstoppable state of change. We are now ready to contemplate the wisdom of impermanence. We have now journeyed far into the second hour of our exploration, the hour of active cultivation. We have learned to anchor ourselves in the present with the breath, to lighten our load by letting go of attachments, to build an inner sanctuary of peace, to infuse it with the warmth of loving kindness, and to protect it with the power of silence. These practices provide us with an immense stability and a soft, resilient heart. And this newfound strength allows us to look directly at one of the most profound and initially most challenging truths of existence. This is the truth of impermanence, or anicca. Our culture often fears this truth, seeing it as a morbid reminder that all things end. But in the light of Buddhist wisdom, impermanence is not a source of despair. It is the very key to our liberation. Impermanence is not a complex philosophy. It is the most obvious, yet most overlooked fact of reality. Everything changes. Everything is in flow. Look at the world outside. The seasons turn in a majestic, endless cycle. Day dissolves into night, and night blossoms into day. Great mountains are slowly, imperceptibly, worn down into sand by wind and rain. Civilizations rise and fall. Nothing is static. Nothing is permanent. Look at your own body. It is not a solid, fixed entity. It is a flowing process, a river of change. Millions of cells are dying and being born within you in this very moment. The air you are breathing in was just recently the atmosphere. The air you breathe out will become a part of the world again. The body you inhabit today is not the same collection of atoms that it was a decade ago. Your own breath is a constant, miniature lesson in impermanence. Each inhalation arises, it persists for a moment, and then it ceases, making way for the next. A beginning, a middle, and an end. in every single moment. And look, most clearly of all, at your own mind. Your thoughts, emotions, and moods are the most vivid display of impermanence imaginable. They are like weather patterns passing through the vast sky of your awareness. One moment, a cloud of happiness drifts by, bathing everything in sunlight. The next, a fog of boredom descends. A sudden thunderstorm of anger can erupt, only to be replaced by the clear, calm sky after the rain. Try to hold on to a single thought. You cannot. It dissolves and is replaced by another. Try to cling to a single feeling forever. It is impossible. No mood has ever lasted. No emotion is final. This is the undeniable reality of our inner experience. Why then, if change is so constant and obvious, do we suffer? We suffer because we live in a state of profound denial of this truth. We suffer because we seek permanence in a world that is fundamentally impermanent. Our delusion is that we try to build a solid, permanent home on the surface of a flowing river. The language we use betrays this delusion. We say, "I am angry," or "I am a sad person." We use the verb to be as if it describes a solid, unchanging identity. We fuse our sense of self with a temporary, passing weather pattern. The wisdom of impermanence invites a gentler, more accurate way of seeing. Instead of "I am angry," we can learn to recognize the feeling of anger is present right now. Instead of "I am sad," we can notice a wave of sadness is moving through me. This is not just a semantic game. It is a fundamental shift in perspective that creates a space between our awareness and the emotion itself. We are not the wave. We are the ocean in which the wave is happening. The root of our dukkha, our unsatisfactoriness, is this constant friction between our desire for permanence and the reality of impermanence. When we experience something pleasant, the poison of greed arises and we cling to it, desperately trying to prevent it from changing. When the beautiful vacation ends, when the joyful feeling fades, we suffer. We suffer not because the vacation ended, but because we were clinging to it. When we experience something unpleasant, the poison of aversion arises and we desperately try to push it away, to make it stop. We suffer not just from the unpleasantness itself, but from our violent resistance to it, forgetting that it too is impermanent. There is a timeless story from the Middle East about a powerful king who was subject to dramatic swings of mood. When his kingdom was victorious, his elation was boundless and egotistical. When he faced setbacks, his despair was bottomless and dark. Weary of this inner volatility, he summoned the wise sages of his court. "I want you to make me a ring," he commanded, "and inscribe upon it a message that will bring me back to balance. When I am at the height of my joy, it must make me sober, and when I am in the depths of my despair, it must give me hope." The sages were perplexed. What single message could possibly accomplish both? After much deliberation, they came back empty-handed. But a humble, old mystic who served the court approached the king. He presented him with a simple gold band. The king looked, and etched into the ring were 4 simple words: "This too shall pass." Sometime later, the king's army won a great and decisive battle. There were feasts and celebrations, and the king's heart swelled with pride and arrogance. In the midst of the revelry, he glanced at his ring. "This too shall pass." A profound sense of humility washed over him. He realized his victory was a fleeting moment in the grand sweep of time. His arrogance dissolved into a quiet, grateful appreciation. Later still, his kingdom was struck by famine and rebellion. His enemies were at the gates, and he was plunged into a dark night of hopelessness. In his terror, his fingers found the ring, and he read the inscription, "This too shall pass." A wave of calm and courage entered his heart. He understood that this defeat, this despair, was not the end of the story. It was a chapter, a season, and it too would change. The wisdom of the ring gave him the strength to endure. This phrase, "This too shall pass," is a master key to emotional freedom. It is the wisdom of impermanence that we can carry with us at all times. When you are experiencing great joy, it is not meant to diminish it, but to allow you to appreciate it more fully, without the anxious clinging that so often accompanies our happiness. When you are experiencing great pain, anxiety, grief, fear, or anger, this wisdom is a lifeline. It is the voice of truth that cuts through the lie of despair which says, "This feeling will last forever." It will not. It cannot. It is, by its very nature, a temporary formation of energy. This knowledge does not necessarily remove the pain of the first arrow, but it completely disarms the second arrow of terror, the terror that we are permanently trapped. And so, we have come to the end of our second hour. We have learned to anchor ourselves in the now, to release our attachments, to build an inner home, to warm it with kindness, and finally, to understand the transient, flowing nature of all experience. We have cultivated the ground of the mind, creating a foundation of stability, clarity, and compassionate wisdom. This prepares us for the final and most profound stage of our journey. Having come to see that all the contents of our consciousness or thoughts, feelings, sensations, and worldly phenomena are impermanent, a new, deeper question arises. Who or what is aware of all this change? If the clouds are constantly appearing and disappearing, what is the nature of the sky that holds them without changing itself? This question marks the beginning of our third hour, the hour of awakening. We will now shift our gaze from the objects of awareness to the nature of awareness itself. We have now arrived at the threshold of the third and final hour of our journey. This is the hour of awakening. In the first hour, we undertook the courageous work of diagnosis, seeing clearly the nature of our inner restlessness. In the second hour, we engaged in the compassionate work of cultivation, developing the tools of breath, letting go, sanctuary, loving kindness, and an understanding of impermanence. We have anchored our boat and tended to its cargo. Now, we embark on the work of realization. We are about to make a pivotal shift in perspective, a turn so profound that it changes everything. We will turn the light of our awareness, which has been looking at the contents of our experience, back upon itself. The central question of this hour is no longer, what am I experiencing? But rather, what is this awareness that is experiencing? For our entire lives, we have been unwitting victims of a case of mistaken identity. We have fundamentally misunderstood who and what we are. We believe ourselves to be the contents of our experience. When a thought of sadness arises, we believe, I am sad. When a feeling of anger flashes through the body, we believe, I am angry. When the body feels pain, we believe, I am in pain. We identify with our jobs, our roles, our histories, our successes, and our failures. We believe we are the story of our life, the fluctuating character at the center of a long and complex drama. The great insight of the world's contemplative traditions is that this is a fundamental error. We have mistaken the transient phenomena that pass through our awareness for the awareness itself. The discovery of our true nature is the discovery that we are not the experience, but the space in which all experience happens. Let us use a powerful and ancient metaphor, the sky and the clouds. Imagine that all of your mental and emotional content, your thoughts, your moods, your memories, your plans, your feelings are like clouds in the sky. Some clouds are bright, white, and fluffy, like moments of joy, inspiration, and love. Other clouds are dark and heavy, filled with the rain of sadness or the thunder and lightning of rage. Some are just a formless gray fog, like periods of confusion, boredom, or apathy. From the moment we were born, we have been taught to identify with these clouds. When a dark storm cloud appears, we point to it and say, that is me. I am stormy and full of rage. When a white, fluffy cloud drifts by, we say, that is me. I am happy and light. Our entire life becomes a frantic and exhausting effort in weather management. We spend all our energy trying to chase after the white clouds, to cling to them as they inevitably drift away, while desperately trying to fight off and dissipate the dark clouds. We are at the mercy of our own inner weather. The Great Awakening, the pivotal moment of liberation, is the realization of a simple, profound truth. You are not the clouds. You are the sky. Consider the nature of the sky. The sky is the vast, open, boundless space that allows all the clouds to be there. The sky is not affected by the quality of the clouds. A violent thunderstorm does not bruise the sky. A hurricane does not tear the sky. A blizzard does not freeze the sky. The sky's nature remains untouched, ever present, and inherently peaceful, regardless of the weather that passes through it. The sky allows the dark clouds to be there, just as it allows the white clouds to be there. It does not cling to the good weather or have an aversion to the bad weather. It is a field of pure, unconditional allowing. To realize that your true nature is this vast, open, sky-like awareness is to find a peace that is not dependent on your inner weather being pleasant. It is to find a peace that can hold both joy and sorrow, both anger and love, both confusion and clarity, with a vast, compassionate, and unbreakable equanimity. The practice is to learn to rest as the sky, watching the clouds of your experience come and go, without identifying with them. You are the space for it all. Let us explore this with another metaphor. Imagine your life as a film being projected onto a screen. It has everything: drama, comedy, tragedy, action, romance. For your whole life, you have been completely absorbed in the movie. You have believed, without question, that you are the main character on the screen. When the character is victorious, you feel pride. When the character is betrayed, you feel outrage. When the character is heartbroken, you feel despair. Your well-being is completely fused with the unfolding narrative of the film. The spiritual awakening is the moment, in the middle of the film, when you suddenly realize something astonishing. You are not the character. You are not the hero or the victim in the story. You are not even the film itself. You are the screen. Contemplate the nature of the screen. The screen is what allows the entire movie to be seen. It is the silent, stable background for the whole dramatic display. When a fire rages in the film, the screen is not burned. When a great flood sweeps through a city, the screen does not get wet. When the characters are crying, the screen is not stained with tears. When the characters are laughing, the screen does not become permanently happy. Its own nature is unaffected by the content that is projected upon it. It is inherently calm, neutral, and spacious. To realize that your core identity is this silent, aware, screen-like presence is to be free from the tyranny of your own life story. The story can continue to unfold with all its ups and downs, but you are no longer a tormented character trapped within it. You are the free, open space that is allowing the story to happen. This is the great liberation of disidentification. It means that when a powerful wave of sadness washes through you, you can feel its texture, its temperature, its energy, without the second arrow of thinking, I am a sad person and I will be sad forever. You can recognize it as a temporary cloud passing through the vast sky of your being. When a harsh criticism comes your way, you can feel the initial sting of the first arrow, but you do not have to identify with it and believe, I am a failure. You can see it as just one image, one scene, being projected on the vast, untouched screen of your awareness. Your thoughts are no longer your masters. They are simply suggestions, passing clouds that you can observe with a detached wisdom. This is the peace that surpasses all understanding. It is not a peace that comes from forcing the mind to be positive or from arranging our life so that nothing ever goes wrong. It is a peace that comes from a radical shift in identity. It is the peace of coming home to who you have always been, behind the mask of your personality and the noise of your thoughts. It is the peace of the sky, which is never harmed by the weather. Having seen that we are not the ever-changing contents of our mind, but the changeless awareness that beholds them, we are now standing at the doorway of true wisdom. This direct seeing, this clear knowing of our true nature, is the birth of what is called prajna, and it is the light that will illuminate the final steps of our path. Having awakened to our true nature is the sky-like awareness that witnesses all experience. A new faculty begins to blossom within us. It is the fruit of this profound realization. This is wisdom, known in the Buddhist tradition as prajna. And here we must be very clear. This wisdom has nothing to do with the accumulation of information, the memorization of facts, or the ability to construct clever philosophical arguments. It is not the knowledge of the intellect, it is the direct knowing of the heart. Prajna is not about adding anything new to ourselves. It is a process of subtraction, of letting go of the illusions that cloud our perception. It is the simple, luminous, and completely transformative act of seeing reality as it is. For most of our lives, we do not see reality as it is. We see it through a thick, distorted lens. This lens has been ground down and colored by our entire life experience, by our personal history, our cultural conditioning, our hopes, and our fears. The three poisons are the primary distortions in this lens. The poison of greed makes us see the world in terms of what it can offer us. The poison of hatred makes us see the world in terms of what threatens us. And the poison of delusion is the very substance of the lens itself, the fundamental ignorance that convinces us that our distorted view is the absolute truth. We don't see a person, we see our projection of a person. We see a potential ally, a rival, someone who reminds us of our mother, someone we need to impress. We don't experience an event, we experience our story about the event. We live our lives in a hall of mirrors, reacting to our own reflections and believing them to be real. Prajna, or wisdom, is the practice of methodically and patiently polishing this lens until it becomes so clear that it is virtually invisible, allowing the light of reality to shine through without distortion. And what do we see when this lens is finally clear? We see the true nature of all phenomena. We see the three fundamental characteristics of existence, not as theories to be believed, but as self-evident truths. First, we see anicca, or impermanence. We no longer just intellectually assent to the idea that things change. We see it directly, in every moment. We see the constant, unstoppable flow of arising and passing in our own thoughts, in our own bodies, and in the world around us. This seeing is not a source of sadness, but of immense relief. It confirms that no state, no matter how painful, is permanent. Second, we see dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. With the lens polished, we see with unshakable clarity that trying to find lasting, permanent happiness in things that are inherently transient is a futile and stressful endeavor. We see that clinging to the pleasant and resisting the unpleasant is the very formula for suffering. This is not a pessimistic judgment. It is a pragmatic insight that naturally steers us away from creating our own misery. And third, we see the deepest and most liberating truth, anatta, or not, self. Having seen that everything is constantly changing, wisdom now looks for the permanent, solid, unchanging I at the center of it all, the thinker of the thoughts, the feeler of the feelings, the master of the house, and it finds nothing there. It sees that what we call ourself is not a noun, but a verb. It is not a fixed entity, but a dynamic, ever-changing process. It is a temporary coming together of body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. There is no static CEO in the headquarters of the mind. There is only an ongoing, interdependent, flowing process. This is the insight that shatters the very foundation of our suffering. There is a classic story that perfectly illustrates the function of wisdom. A man walks into his dark room at dusk. In the corner, his eyes make out a coiled shape. His mind, conditioned by a lifetime of caution and fear, immediately projects an identity onto the shape, a venomous snake. The moment he believes there is a snake, his entire body reacts. Adrenaline floods his system, his heart pounds in his chest, his palms sweat. He is frozen with terror. His suffering is absolutely real. He may scream for help or grab a stick to attack the snake. His whole reality is now organized around this perceived threat. Then, a friend walks into the room and simply flips a switch, flooding the room with light. The light represents prajna, the clear light of wisdom. In this bright, unwavering light, the man can now see what is truly there. It is not a snake. It is, and always was, a simple coil of rope. This is the crucial point. The instant the man sees the rope, his fear vanishes completely. He doesn't have to practice a technique to stop being afraid of the rope. He doesn't need to give himself a pep talk or try to replace his negative thoughts with positive ones. The clear seeing itself is the liberation. The suffering was entirely dependent on the misperception. Once the perception is corrected, the suffering dissolves. Wisdom is the turning on of the light. All our deep-seated anxieties about ourself, or fear of failure, our fear of judgment, our fear of death, are forms of the fear of the snake. We believe there is a solid, vulnerable me that needs to be protected at all costs. The insight of anatta, of not self, is the light that reveals that this solid, separate self we were so desperately trying to defend was, like the snake, a trick of the dim light, a projection of a fearful mind. Living with this wisdom does not mean we become blank, emotionless robots. Our unique personalities continue. The movie of our life still plays out, but we are no longer completely lost in the drama. We no longer take our own stories so seriously. When someone criticizes us, we can feel the sting. But wisdom understands that the criticism is landing upon a changing process of thoughts and feelings, not a solid me. This takes the personal venom out of the experience. When success arrives, wisdom allows us to enjoy it fully, but without the egoic attachment of I have succeeded, because it knows that this too is just a temporary condition. Life becomes less of a tense, personal struggle and more of a fluid, graceful dance. We stop wasting enormous amounts of energy defending a phantom, and that energy is liberated for more creative and compassionate ways of being. Wisdom, then, is the ultimate medicine. It doesn't just treat the symptoms of our suffering. It removes the cause at its very root, which is ignorance. It is the clear seeing that dissolves the illusion of the separate self. And when this illusion begins to dissolve, something beautiful and natural begins to emerge in its place. When we truly see that there is no solid me separate from a solid you, and that all of us are interconnected parts of the same unfolding process, our capacity for compassion becomes boundless. We see a suffering being not as another to be pitied, but as a part of ourselves. This clear seeing of our shared nature is the fertile ground from which authentic, unshakable compassion, or karuna, is born. When the clear light of wisdom, of prajna, dawns in the mind, it reveals a world without solid borders. The illusion of a separate, isolated self begins to dissolve, and we see, with undeniable clarity, that we are all interconnected, threads in the same magnificent, intricate tapestry of existence. The heart's natural, spontaneous, and irresistible response to this profound realization is compassion, or karuna. If wisdom is the eye that sees the truth of our shared reality, compassion is the heart that beats in rhythm with that truth. They are the two wings of a great bird, and without both, we cannot fly. Compassion is often misunderstood in our culture. We mistake it for pity, which is a feeling of looking down from a position of superiority upon another's misfortune. We mistake it for sentimentality, a fleeting, superficial, emotional reaction. But true karuna is none of these things. It is fierce, wise, and deeply rooted in the soil of reality. It is not the sad feeling that arises from seeing another suffer. It is the active, unwavering wish to see that suffering come to an end. It is the energy that moves us to act. Wisdom sees that another person's suffering is not, in fact, separate from our own. Compassion is the hand that reaches out, intuitively, to soothe that suffering. As your left hand would automatically soothe a wound on your right hand, there is no separation. There is no helper and helped. There is only a unified being tending to its own wounds. This compassion is the dynamic, active twin of wisdom. Prajna is the knowing. Karuna is the loving. Prajna is the insight. Karuna is the action that flows from that insight. A person who cultivates wisdom without compassion can become cold, distant, and detached. A person who cultivates compassion without wisdom can become foolishly sentimental, causing more harm than good through their unenlightened interventions. The path to wholeness requires the marriage of both. This true compassion, born of wisdom, does not lead to the emotional burnout we so often associate with caring. Burnout comes from the ego's desire to be seen as a helper, from the frustration of not getting the results we want, from the grief of feeling separate from those we are trying to help. Karuna, flowing from a place of interconnectedness, is a boundless wellspring. It is the effortless, frictionless response of the universe to its own suffering. Like all wholesome qualities, compassion must begin at home. It must begin with ourselves. Our capacity to hold the suffering of others is directly proportional to our capacity to hold our own. If we are harsh, judgmental, and unforgiving toward our own failings, our compassion for others will always be shallow, tinged with a subtle sense of superiority or impatience. True compassion for others blossoms from a ground of radical self-compassion. This is not about letting ourselves off the hook for harmful behavior. It is about learning to look at our own mistakes with the same clear, wise eyes we are turning toward the world. It is the practice of seeing the rope, not the snake. When we fail, when we act unskillfully, instead of seeing a permanently flawed, bad self, the snake, we can learn to see a conditioned human being who acted from a place of pain, fear, or ignorance, the rope. This clear seeing allows us to respond not with self-hatred, but with a firm and gentle resolve. That was unskillful, that caused harm. Let me learn from this, and let me do better. This is treating ourselves as we would treat a dear friend who is struggling, and it is the foundation upon which all authentic compassion is built. In the Buddhist tradition, the ultimate embodiment of this compassionate energy is a figure known as Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. A Bodhisattva is a being who, on the verge of attaining final enlightenment and release from all suffering, makes a great and noble vow. Standing at the threshold of eternal peace, Avalokiteshvara heard the cries of all the beings of the world, still trapped in the cycles of their own suffering. Moved by a compassion so immense it shook the universe, he chose to postpone his own final liberation, vowing to remain in the world in countless forms until every last being was free. He is often depicted with 1,000 arms, each with a gentle hand ready to help, and in the palm of each hand is an eye of wisdom, to see exactly where help is needed. This is not a story about a god to be worshipped. It is an archetypal map of our own highest potential. We can all become 1,000-armed bodhisattvas in our own lives. We do not need to perform grand, world-saving gestures. The 1,000 arms represent the 1,000 small, ordinary opportunities we have each day to lessen the suffering in the world. A kind word to a stressed colleague is one of those arms. The act of truly listening, without judgment, to a friend in pain is one of those arms. Holding a door for a stranger, offering your seat on a bus, smiling at a cashier, these are the simple, powerful actions of the compassionate heart. This is wisdom in motion. We can actively cultivate this quality through simple, direct practices. One of the most powerful is the practice of deep listening. So often, when others speak, we are not truly listening. We are formulating our reply, waiting for our turn to talk, judging what they are saying. To listen with compassion is to offer the other person the full, undivided, silent sanctuary of your attention. It is one of the greatest gifts you can give. We can also practice compassionate speech, making the conscious intention to speak only words that are true, kind, and helpful. Before we speak, we can ask ourselves, is this true? Is this kind? Is this necessary? A simple and profound contemplative practice is to reflect on the phrase, just like me. When you encounter someone, particularly someone you find difficult or different, You can silently reflect, just like me, this person wants to be happy. Just like me, this person wants to be free from pain. Just like me, this person has experienced sadness, loneliness, and despair. Just like me, this person is seeking some form of peace. This simple reflection dissolves the illusion of separation and opens a doorway in the heart where judgment once stood. Compassion, then, is the natural radiance of a heart that has been clarified by wisdom. It is the ultimate expression of our interconnectedness. It is what makes our spiritual journey not a selfish pursuit of our own peace, but a deeply meaningful participation in the healing of the world. It infuses our life with purpose. When our actions are guided by the clear light of wisdom and warmed by the boundless heart of compassion, our life naturally finds a harmonious equilibrium. We learn to walk a path that avoids the traps of extremism, the harsh self-denial of the ascetic, and the mindless indulgence of the hedonist. We learn to walk the path of balance, the path of integration, the noble path known as the middle way. A life that is guided by the clear light of wisdom and warmed by the boundless heart of compassion will naturally find its own equilibrium. It learns to walk a path of profound balance, a path that skillfully avoids the treacherous ditches of extremism on either side. This path, the very first teaching the Buddha offered after his own enlightenment, is known as the middle way. It is not a compromise, nor is it a path of mediocrity. It is a noble, precise, and highly intelligent way of engaging with the world that leads directly to the cessation of suffering and the heart of peace. To understand the genius of the middle way, we must first understand the landscape in which the Buddha taught. At that time, spiritual seekers were generally presented with two extreme options. The first was the path of sensual indulgence. This was the belief that happiness could be found by satisfying every craving, by pursuing every pleasure, by immersing oneself in the delights of the material world. This was the life the Buddha himself had lived as a young prince, surrounded by every luxury imaginable. He had music, fine foods, beautiful companions, and exquisite palaces. Yet he found that this life, far from bringing lasting peace, only created a restless, insatiable hunger for more. It was a life of chasing fleeting pleasures, which left him with a deep sense of spiritual emptiness. The second extreme was the path of severe asceticism. This was the belief that spiritual liberation could be achieved only by punishing and tormenting the body, by denying it all comfort, and by engaging in extreme acts of self-mortification. After leaving his palace, the Buddha also threw himself into this path with ferocious determination. He held his breath until his head felt like it would split open. He ate only a single grain of rice a day until his ribs stuck out like the rafters of a ruined barn. He slept on beds of thorns. But after years of this brutal practice, he realized that he was no closer to enlightenment. He had only succeeded in weakening his body and clouding his mind, making deep concentration impossible. This path, too, was a dead end. Having experienced the futility of both extremes, the Buddha discovered a third way, a path that transcended them both. This was the middle way. It avoids the ditch of self-indulgence, which leads to addiction and restlessness, and it avoids the ditch of self-mortification, which leads to weakness and despair. It is a path of wisdom, clarity, and balance. The most beautiful illustration of this teaching is the story of a monk named Sona. Sona had been a wealthy and accomplished musician before joining the Buddha's community, renowned for his skill with the lute. As a monk, he applied the same intense, perfectionistic energy to his spiritual practice. He practiced walking meditation with such ferocity that the soles of his feet became cracked and bloody, staining the path behind him. Despite his heroic efforts, he found his mind was still filled with restlessness, and he felt no closer to peace. He became deeply discouraged, thinking that perhaps this path was not for him, and considered returning to his old life of worldly pleasure. The Buddha, with his deep insight into the minds of others, knew of Sona's struggle. He went to him and asked, "Sona, before you became a monk, you were a skilled lute player, were you not?" "Yes, Lord," Sona replied. The Buddha then asked, "Tell me, Sona, what happened if you tuned the strings of your lute too tightly?" Sona answered, "Lord, if the strings were too tight, they would snap." "And what happened if the strings were too loose?" The Buddha continued. "If they were too loose, Lord, they would make no sound." And in order to produce beautiful, harmonious music, the Buddha asked, what was required? Sona's eyes lit up with understanding. To make beautiful music, the strings had to be tuned just right, not too tight and not too loose. The Buddha smiled. So it is, Sona, with the spiritual life. If your effort is too tight, too strained, it leads to agitation and restlessness. If your effort is too loose, too slack, it leads to laziness and complacency. You must tune the instrument of your body and mind to the middle way. finding the perfect, balanced tension that produces the beautiful music of awakening. Oh, this ancient wisdom is more relevant today than ever before. We live in a culture of extremes. We must learn to tune our own lives. Consider the balance between work and rest. One extreme is the workaholic, whose strings are stretched to the breaking point, leading to burnout, illness, and a life devoid of joy. The other extreme is the person lost in idleness and distraction, whose strings are so loose they produce no meaningful melody. The middle way is finding a rhythm of focused, purposeful work balanced with genuine, restorative, and unapologetic rest. Consider the balance of self-care. One extreme is mindless self-indulgence, using the banner of self-care to justify endless consumption and distraction. The other is harsh self-neglect, the belief that it is selfish or weak to tend to our own needs. The middle way is wise stewardship. It is caring for our body, mind, and heart, not as an indulgence, but because they are the precious instrument we have been given to play the music of our lives. Consider the balance between effort and acceptance. The tight string is the frantic need to control every outcome, the anxiety-driven effort to manage every detail of life. The loose string is passive resignation, the victim mentality that says nothing can be done. The middle way is the skillful dance between doing and being. It is applying our energy wisely where we can make a difference, while simultaneously cultivating a graceful acceptance of the things we cannot change. This middle way is not a weak compromise. It is not a 50-50 split between two bad options. It is a sharp, precise, and dynamic path, sometimes called a razor's edge. It requires constant mindfulness and sensitivity to the needs of the moment. There are times when a situation calls for strong, decisive effort. There are other times when it calls for softness and surrender. The wisdom of the middle way is the ability to discern which is needed and to respond with skill and grace rather than from a rigid, dogmatic position. This balanced, harmonious path is the practical, living expression of a heart and mind that are awakening. It is how wisdom and compassion manifest in our day-to-day actions, choices, and attitudes. It is a path that leads not to some far-off, heavenly realm, but to peace and freedom right here, in the midst of our complex, beautiful, and challenging human lives. This integrated way of living is the outward sign of a profound inner state of rest. And so, we must ask, what is this state truly like? What does the deep, healing sleep of the awakened one feel like from the inside? Is it a permanent, blissful trance, a disengagement from the world, or is it something far more alive, engaged, and extraordinary? We have walked a long and patient path through the inner landscapes of the mind. We have learned to find our anchor, to build our sanctuary, and to see the world with the clear eyes of wisdom and the warm heart of compassion. We have learned to walk the middle way, a path of exquisite balance, and so we arrive at a crucial question. What is the destination? What is this profound sleep, this ultimate rest that is the fruit of this entire journey? When we speak of the sleep of the awakened one, we must be very careful, for it is a deep paradox. It is not the dull, unconscious sleep of ignorance. It is, in fact, the most vibrant and complete state of being awake imaginable. Our culture imagines the enlightened or awakened person as being in a state of permanent, passive bliss, sitting serenely under a tree, disconnected from the messy realities of the world. But this is a fantasy. The rest of the awakened mind is not a retreat from life. It is the most skillful, effective, and graceful way of engaging with life. It is not a state of inaction, but a state of what the Taoist sages called Wu Wei. Wu Wei is often translated as non-doing or non-action, but its true meaning is closer to effortless action or spontaneous right action. It is the state of being so in tune with the flow of life that our actions arise naturally, without inner friction or the straining effort of the ego. Consider our usual way of acting. It is driven by the will. We impose our plans on the world. We try to force outcomes. We struggle against resistance. Our actions are born from a sense of me trying to control that. This is like trying to row a heavy boat directly against a powerful river current. It is exhausting, inefficient, and a constant, frustrating battle against the nature of reality. The state of Wu Wei is entirely different. It is the state of the master boatman. Let us explore this image. An unskilled boatman, representing our ordinary, ego-driven state, sees the river of life as an adversary. He identifies a destination on the opposite bank and tries to row towards it in a straight line, fighting the current with all his might. He strains at the oars, his muscles ache, he curses the river for its resistance. He is so consumed by his battle, so focused on his own effort, that he fails to notice the subtleties of the water around him. His journey is one of grim, miserable toil. The skilled boatman, the one who embodies Wu Wei, begins not with action, but with deep observation. He does not see the river as an enemy to be conquered. He sees it, with wisdom, for what it is, a dynamic, powerful system of currents, eddies, and flows. He spends time understanding its nature. Then, instead of fighting the current, he uses it. He angles his boat into the flow, using the river's own energy to carry him towards his destination. His effort is minimal, applied only at key moments for subtle steering. His actions are quiet, graceful, and perfectly attuned to the conditions of the moment. He is not battling the river, he is dancing with it. He arrives at his destination peacefully, with his energy intact, having enjoyed the journey. This is the rest of the awakened one. It is the cessation of the inner battle against the river of life. It is no longer me fighting against reality. There is just a harmonious, intelligent, unfolding dance. This shift from fighting to dancing, from struggling to flowing, is rooted in one of the most practical changes that occurs on this path: the shift from reacting to responding. Reacting is the mode of the untrained mind. It is the mechanical, unconscious process of the second arrow. An event occurs, we receive a criticism. We feel a pang of desire. We get cut off in traffic and we instantly, automatically, react based on our deep-seated conditioning. A criticism triggers defensiveness. A desire triggers grasping. A frustration triggers anger. We are like puppets, and our conditioning pulls the strings. There is no space, no freedom, no choice. Responding is the mode of the awakened mind. An event occurs, but because of the stability and clarity we have cultivated through our practice, a space opens up between the event and our action. It may be the space of a single conscious breath, but it is a space of infinite freedom. In this pause, we are no longer slaves to our conditioning. Wisdom can arise, compassion can arise. We can see the impulse to react defensively, but we are not compelled by it. We can then choose a more skillful, more compassionate, more effective response. We can meet criticism with curiosity. We can meet desire with observation. We can meet frustration with patience. The strings of the puppet are cut. This is true freedom. It is the freedom to choose our actions based on the present reality, rather than being driven by the ghosts of our past. This brings us to another deep truth about this awakened rest. It is not found in an absence of storms. It is peace in the midst of the storm. Life will continue to present challenges. The world will continue to be complex and often painful. The awakened mind is not a perpetually placid pond, immune to ripples. Rather, it is like the eye of a hurricane. The winds of circumstance may rage. The external world may be in chaos, but at the very center of the awakened mind is a point of profound, unshakable stillness. This inner peace is not conditional. It does not depend on everything going our way. It is an intrinsic quality of our true nature, which we have learned to access and abide in. From this calm center, we can engage with the world's most difficult problems, not from a place of reactive fear or anger, but from a place of clear, compassionate, and effective action. So, the sleep we have been seeking is this paradoxical state of being deeply at rest and more fully alive than ever before. It is the grace of effortless action, the liberty of responding wisely, and the resilience of a peace that cannot be disturbed by external events. It is the end of the war with ourselves and with the world. It is the music that flows when the instrument of our life is perfectly in tune. This profound state of integration, however, is not a solitary achievement to be hoarded. In fact, the final flowering of this awakening reveals the deepest truth of all, that our peace is not our own. Our existence is not our own. It is inextricably woven into the existence of all things. The ultimate realization is the truth of our radical, inescapable, and beautiful interconnectedness, a truth known as interbeing. We have journeyed far. We have navigated the intricate landscapes of the mind, from the subtle dissatisfaction of dukkha to the fiery roots of the three poisons. We have been given a map, the Noble Eightfold Path, and learned to use the tools of breath and mindfulness to steady our steps. We have cultivated a heart that radiates with kindness, compassion, joy, and a profound, unshakable equanimity. And so, a question naturally arises in the quiet of the heart. Where does this path ultimately lead? Is the final destination a remote monastery, a life of renunciation, a turning away from the world that has caused us so much friction and so much pain? The answer, which lies at the very core of this wisdom, is both simpler and infinitely more profound. The journey was never about escaping the world. It was about learning to finally, truly live within it. This final step is not an escape, but a homecoming. It is the beginning of a silent revolution, a transformation so deep and so personal that it changes everything without appearing to change anything at all. This revolution does not happen on the streets with banners and shouts. It happens in the quiet cathedral of your own consciousness. We look at the world, at the relentless tide of news, the political division, the environmental crises, the societal pressures, and we feel an overwhelming urge to fix it, to change it, to fight it. But the wisdom of this path suggests a radical reordering of priorities. It whispers that trying to create peace in the world without first cultivating peace in our own minds is like trying to calm a stormy ocean by pressing down on its waves. The turbulence we see outside is merely a grand reflection of the billions of individual storms raging within human hearts. The real, lasting change, the only change that has ever truly mattered, begins with the quiet, courageous act of transforming your own perception. It is the understanding that you cannot always control the events of your life, but you can, with practice, control your relationship to those events. To meet chaos with calm, to meet hatred with compassion, to meet fear with a steady and open heart. This is not a passive act. It is the most active, the most courageous, and the most revolutionary stance one can take. The world does not need more people who can skillfully argue. It needs more people who can skillfully listen. It does not need more anger. It needs more wisdom. The silent revolution is the realization that by transforming your inner world, you inevitably and profoundly transform the outer world you inhabit and create. With this understanding, the entire world becomes your monastery. You do not need to seek out special places of silence, for the practice is not about finding silence, but about bringing a silent mind to the noise. Your morning commute, once a source of frustration and anger, becomes a hermitage on wheels. The traffic jam is no longer an obstacle to your day, but an opportunity to practice patience, a chance to simply sit, to breathe, to observe the rising and falling of irritation without judgment, to send a thought of kindness to the other drivers, each trapped in their own little box, with their own private struggles. The stressful office meeting, with its competing egos and agendas, becomes your training ground in right speech. Can you speak your truth with kindness? Can you listen without formulating a response? Can you detach from the outcome, contributing your best effort without clinging to praise or fearing criticism? This is the practice in action. The line at the grocery store becomes a standing meditation. Feel the soles of your feet on the floor. Notice the colors and shapes around you. Observe the impatience of others without absorbing it. Even the most mundane chore, like washing the dishes, is transformed. It is no longer something to be rushed through. It is a dance of water, soap, and sensation. Feel the warmth of the water on your hands. See the iridescent bubbles. Hear the sound of the plates clinking. In that moment, there is no past to regret, no future to worry about. There is only the simple, profound reality of washing the dish. Life itself, in all its messy, unpredictable, glorious detail, becomes your teacher, and every moment becomes a new page in your book of practice. Nowhere is this practice more needed than in our relationship with the technology that defines the modern age. Our glowing screens, our digital companions, promised us a world of connection, knowledge, and efficiency. But for many, they have delivered a world of distraction, comparison, and a new, more insidious form of suffering. The monkey mind, that restless chattering voice we have worked so hard to tame, absolutely adores the infinite scroll. It thrives on the constant stream of notifications, the endless feed of curated lives that breed envy and a sense of inadequacy. The silent revolution, therefore, demands that we become mindful cyborgs. The goal is not to smash our devices and live in the woods, but to reclaim our sovereignty over them. A tool is only a tool when you are the one in control. The moment it controls you, you have become its tool. The practice is to bring conscious intention to every tap, every click, every swipe. Before you pick up your phone, ask yourself, why? What is my intention? Am I seeking specific information, or am I seeking a momentary escape from an uncomfortable feeling? When you put it down, ask yourself, do I feel better or worse? More connected or more isolated? More informed or more agitated? This is the application of right mindfulness to our digital lives. We can create our own digital rituals, a digital sunset where all screens are turned off an hour before bed, allowing the mind to naturally unwind. We can practice the lost art of single tasking, closing all other tabs to focus on the one thing before us. We can curate our digital environment with the same care we would curate our home, unfollowing accounts that trigger anger or envy, and inviting in voices that inspire peace and wisdom. We must learn to use these powerful tools to serve our liberation, not to deepen our imprisonment. In the midst of this chaotic, demanding world, it is vital to create intentional pockets of peace, oases in the desert of the everyday. A revolution cannot be sustained on burnout. This does not necessarily mean week-long silent retreats or expensive vacations. The most potent oases are often the smallest and most accessible. It is the conscious decision to pause, to stop for just a moment before answering that stressful email, and take 3 deep, deliberate breaths, in and out. Feel the air fill your lungs, and feel the tension release as you exhale. That 30-second pause can be the difference between a reactive, angry response and a calm, considered one. It is the practice of feeling your feet firmly planted on the ground while waiting for the elevator. A small act of re-anchoring yourself in your body, in the present moment. It is the choice to eat your lunch away from your desk, without a screen, and to simply taste the food, to give yourself 10 minutes of genuine rest and nourishment. These are not moments of inactivity. They are moments of profound, restorative action. They are the stitches that mend the fabric of our sanity, preventing the tiny rips and tears of daily stress from becoming a gaping hole. By peppering your day with these micro-oases, you stop the relentless accumulation of tension. You remind yourself, again and again, that you are not a machine, that your peace is a priority, and that it can be found right here, in the space between 2 breaths. This brings us to the final, and perhaps most liberating, realization of all, beautifully captured in a timeless Zen story. A student asks a great master, "What did you do before you were enlightened?" The master replied, "I chopped wood, and I carried water." The student, eager for the secret, then asked, "And what do you do now, after you have attained enlightenment?" The master smiled gently and said, "I chop wood, and I carry water." The story is not a riddle. It is the entire path, condensed into a single, elegant truth. The outer circumstances of our lives may not change. There will always be wood to chop and water to carry, bills to pay, relationships to navigate, challenges to face. The revolution is not in the what, but in the how. Before the practice, one chops wood with a mind full of resentment, thinking of the aching back, the splinters, the endless work. One carries water with a mind full of anxiety, worrying about spilling it, about the long walk, about the thirst of tomorrow. The actions are performed, but the person is absent, lost in a storm of thought. After years of practice, after the mind has been calmed and the heart opened, the actions remain the same. But now, the wood is just wood. The chopping is just chopping. The mind is fully present with the scent of the pine, the arc of the axe, the satisfying split of the log. The water is just water. The carrying is just carrying. The mind is aware of the coolness of the bucket, the shifting weight, the feeling of the earth beneath each step. The actor and the action have become one. There is no resistance, no struggle, no story. There is only the simple, peaceful, luminous reality of the present moment. This is freedom. It is not found in achieving some extraordinary state or escaping to a perfect place. It is found in the heart of the ordinary, in learning to chop your wood and carry your water with a silent mind and a free heart. This is the revolution. It is quiet, it is profound, and it is available to you right now, in this very breath. We began this journey together in a quiet room, illuminated only by the cold, blue light of a screen. We began with a feeling, a low, persistent hum of anxiety that has become the background music of our modern lives. It was the feeling of being overwhelmed, of running without moving, of being deeply connected to a world of information, yet somehow disconnected from our own selves. We started with a diagnosis, an honest and courageous look at the nature of this universal condition, the subtle but pervasive dissatisfaction the Buddha called dukkha. We acknowledged its truth, not as a sentence of despair, but as the necessary first step toward liberation. From that honest beginning, we walked a path together. We descended to the very roots of our discontent, identifying the 3 poisons of greed, aversion, and ignorance that fuel the fever of our restlessness. We then turned our gaze inward, to the chaotic theater of the mind, that restless monkey swinging from thought to thought, and we learned not to fight it, but to gently befriend it. We discovered the simplest and most profound of anchors, the breath, our constant companion that could always bring us home to the present moment. With that anchor, we were given a map, the Noble Eightfold Path, a comprehensive design for living a life of wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. We learned to see clearly, to think with intention, to speak with kindness, and to act with compassion. We cultivated a heart that could radiate loving kindness, feel the suffering of others without being broken by it, and rejoice in their happiness. And finally, we learned to stand with a quiet and unshakable equanimity, like a great mountain that remains serene amidst the passing storms of life. And so, What is the final message of this long and winding journey? It is this: peace is not a destination. It is not a quiet cabin in the woods, or a permanent state of bliss that you must strive for and one day attain. Peace is not the absence of noise, of challenge, of pain. It is the ability to cultivate a quiet center within the heart of the noise. It is the strength to keep your heart open in the face of pain. The wisdom of this path does not offer you an escape route from the complexities of human life. Instead, it offers you a way to walk directly through them, with your eyes and your heart wide open. The goal was never to empty the mind, but to be fully present with whatever arises within it. The purpose was not to transcend the world, but to learn to touch it and be touched by it with profound love and clarity. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to acquire anything you do not already have. The seeds of awakening, of boundless compassion, of unshakable peace are already within you. They have always been there, waiting patiently in the soil of your own being. This journey, these words, these practices, they have been nothing more than sunlight and water offered to help those seeds to sprout. But the growth, the unfolding, the blossoming, that is entirely yours. You are the gardener of your own heart. You hold the power, in this moment and the next, to choose what you will cultivate. Look away from the screen for a moment. Feel the breath moving in your body. That is the anchor. Feel the simple, quiet aliveness of this moment. That is the destination. The path is now yours to walk. Peace is in every step.